Chapter 576. The matter of old friends, the development of the situation, was a little beyond Qin Feng's expectations. He originally wanted to use the people from Taishan Academy to restrain Su Yi and the others, but he didn't expect Su Yi to target him instead. Qin Feng didn't expect Su Yi to react so quickly. Sure enough, the people on the list of formidable heroes weren't simple, not only in terms of strength, but also in terms of scheming. Now he was in a very disadvantageous situation. The sect master of the blood-refining sect, Shui Wuchang, the eighth on the list of formidable heroes, and Zhou Ji. He had to go all out to deal with any one of them, and he didn't have much confidence. As for Su Yu, Qin Feng didn't have much hope. After all, there was still Su Yi. Once she got involved, the entire Guanghan Palace wouldn't be able to get away. You don't have to do anything. Just restrain Su Yi. They can't kill me, Qin Feng said. Su Yu still hadn't given up on him, which made Qin Feng feel warm, but he couldn't selfishly involve Su Yu and the Guanghan Palace. Su Yu shook her head and said, "Even if you block Zhou Ji, there's still Shui Wuchang. I still have the exploding flower. It won't be easy to eat me." Qin Feng shook his head and said in a low voice, "If you insist on fighting, you'll arouse public anger. The Guanghan Palace alone won't be able to stop them." Su Yu's face froze, and then she sighed. "Be careful, I'll block Su Yi." Qin Feng nodded and took a few steps forward, looking at Zhou Ji and Shui Wuchang. His action attracted many people's attention. Facing Zhou Ji and Shui Wuchang alone, not many people could do it. The spiritual power in his body was constantly mobilized. In his qi si, the Tao seed was spinning, and wisps of Tao qi filled the air. Luster flickered in his flesh, and between his eyebrows, a red light lingered, and the light of chaos flickered on the surface of his body. Facing such an expert, Qin Feng didn't dare to be careless. He had to adjust his state to the best of his ability. At the same time, he sent a mental message to the exploding flower and was ready to transform at any time. The entire Windstream Valley was silent. There was a faint murderous aura in the air. Everyone was looking at the three people facing each other. Zhou Ji smiled and crossed his arms in front of his chest. His expression was calm and composed. On the other hand, Shui Wuchang's blood qi surged. His face was ferocious and his eyes were filled with killing intent. However, just as the two of them were about to attack, a fire dragon suddenly roared out to block their attacks. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. Even Zhou Hen and Shui Wuchang, who had attacked, were stunned. They looked at the person who had attacked in astonishment. The masked girl from Taishan Academy. Everyone was stunned. No one had expected that this female student would actually help Qin Feng. What was going on? Qin Feng was also confused. He was still planning to fight with his life on the line. In the end, such a scene occurred. Not only them, even Yi Hong and Tan Tan looked at Qiu Yun in shock. "Qiu Yun," Yi Hong asked. Qiu Yun stared fiercely at Qin Feng and then said softly, "Look at the stone axe on his back. Doesn't it feel familiar?" Yi Hong and Tan Tan were stunned. They immediately cast their gazes on the sky-splitting axe on Qin Feng's back. After a moment, their pupils shrank. "That stinking rascal's brother," Tan Tan exclaimed. Her expression immediately turned to anger. Yi Hong's expression also darkened. He looked at Qiu Yun and said in a low voice, "You mean this guy's the brother of that bastard who cheated us?" Yi Hong stared at the sky-splitting axe. After a moment, he nodded slightly and said in a deep voice, "When that bastard was escaping, he leaked an image. A knife, an axe, and a spear. This axe is indeed very similar to the axe in the image. That rascal was one step ahead of us. He must have had helpers. They're probably the two bastards with the axe and spear that he mentioned," Tan Tan said through gritted teeth. Yi Hong nodded slightly. His eyes turned cold as he thought of the embarrassing scene. "It seems that one of them was in the open, deliberately interfering with our line of sight. The other two were in the dark, trapping us. We can't be sure if this person is related to that Jing guy, but we must ask clearly," Qiu Yun said. Her eyes were filled with anger. Her body trembled imperceptibly. Obviously, she had suffered a great loss at the hands of that Jing guy. "Hey, that kid. What's the point of pretending not to know us? Tan Tan pointed at Qin Feng and scolded. Qin Feng frowned. Did he know them? No, he didn't. This woman must be crazy. What do you mean? What's the point of pretending now? Don't think that because you didn't show up at that time, we didn't know that you were involved. Since we met today, let's return the favor. Tan Tan was sure that Qin Feng was also present at that time. The group was speechless. They glanced at Qin Feng. What did this guy do? How did he offend the people of the Taishan Academy? Even Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. How many people had this guy offended? Qin Feng was really wronged. He swore that he had never seen these 3 people before. How could he have offended them? He frowned and said, "You 3, how did I offend you?" Tan Tan was about to scold him when Yi Hong stopped him and said, "You should be familiar with the 3 bastards of the flowery world. They're the sun-shooting trio of the Pure Land of God." Qin Feng's pupil shrank, and he whispered, "How do you know?" He was shocked. Those who could say the sun-shooting trio must have seen Tan Xian or Jing Wui. "So, you admit that you were related to that guy with the surname Jing?" Yi Hong asked. Qin Feng didn't say anything, but his eyes were cold. From their reaction, Jing Wui should have come into contact with them, and it was very unpleasant. And from Qin Feng's reaction, they also concluded that Qin Feng was one of the brothers that the scoundrel mentioned. Maybe you weren't there at the time, but since you know him, you should atone for his sins. Yi Hong said indifferently. "Where is he?" Qin Feng asked. "He's already dead. How dare he offend us? Do you think he can still be alive?" Tan Tan sneered and took out a piece of cloth, which made Qin Feng's body turn cold. There was a pattern on this piece of cloth. It was the pattern of the Imperial Capital's assassin organization. Jing Wui had this pattern on his body. "You killed him?" Qin Feng narrowed his eyes as a cold glint flickered in his eyes. Everyone could feel a murderous aura suddenly erupting from his body. This was a murderous aura full of blood. Even compared to some ruthless people with blood on their hands, it was not inferior. "Qin Feng, restrain yourself." So you said quickly. Now he couldn't have a conflict with these students. Qin Feng stared coldly at the 3 people in the air and said coldly, "I'll ask you again, where is he? I'll also tell you again, I killed him." Tan Tan's mouth was full of sarcasm. She pointed her finger, and a golden light burst out at Qin Feng. Bang! Su Yu waved her hand, and a spiritual force shot out and scattered it. The sudden appearance of Su Yu made Tan Tan slightly stunned. She immediately looked at Qin Feng behind Su Yu with a sarcastic look. "That rascal likes to take liberties with women, and you, the trash, like to hide behind women." Sure enough, a rascal and trash are really the 3 cheap guests. Tan Tan's words didn't leave any face. Not to mention these arrogant, ruthless people, even a slightly bloody man couldn't bear it. "How can you talk like this? You call me trash, rascal, and have no manners." The explosion was angry that someone insulted her uncle. She clenched her small fist and shouted, "Where did this wild girl come from? Go die." Being called uneducated, Tan Tan was furious. She pointed her finger, and a golden light burst out at the explosion. Looking at the unyielding Tan Tan, Su Yu's face was also a little angry. This person is quite beautiful, but why is her heart so vicious? She attacked twice, and both times she tried to kill. However, just as she was about to stop it, a figure beat her to it and stood in front of the big explosion. Chapter 577. Furious attack with a shout in his heart. Qin Feng's wide sleeves suddenly tightened. He raised his fist, clenched his fingers, and punched towards the incoming golden light. A dull sound accompanied by a golden light spread out wantonly. Qin Feng took 2 steps back and dissolved the force that invaded his body. His expression became colder as he stared at Tan Tan. The killing intent in his heart could not be suppressed and continued to grow. Qin Feng could understand that Tan Tan was angry at him because of Jing Wui. However, to attack the big popcorn who only had the appearance of a child, this somewhat crossed his bottom line. Big Popcorn only said a few words of justice for him, and it attracted the killing intent of the other party. This woman's heart was really vicious, killing people just because of a disagreement. Is this how the people of the Imperial Celestial Academy do things? Aren't they a little too arrogant? Qin Feng coldly said. Xiao Yun and Yi Hong's expressions changed slightly. They did not expect Tan Tan to say no and even attack the little girl. But thinking of how she was molested by that scoundrel, with her noble princess status, she really could not stand it. Not only her, even she could not help but want to go berserk. She wanted to beat up everyone who knew that scoundrel. Therefore, Xiao Yun, who was about to stop them, did not do so in the end. Tan Tan, don't act recklessly. We can't kill this person. We still need to use him to lure Jing Wui out. Yi Hong said in a low voice. Of course I know. I just want to provoke him and beat him up to vent the hatred in my heart. Tan Tan said, besides, since this matter has nothing to do with him, we can't just use the identity of the Academy to capture people. As long as he makes the first move, it's reasonable for us to capture him. Yi Hong was startled and immediately nodded. Indeed, they could not ignore the reputation of Imperial Mystery Academy. Uncle, do you need me to make a move? Big Popcorn asked. Qin Feng shook his head, suppressing the killing intent in his heart. With his current strength, even if he fought with his life on the line, he wouldn't be able to kill his opponent. He wouldn't be able to avenge Jing Wui, so he had to endure. Staring at Qin Feng, Tan Tan sneered and said, I don't need a trash like you to tell me how to do things. If you have the ability, then come out and let me see if a trash like you has the qualifications to lecture me. Hearing this, Qin Feng sneered. The other party's provocation was so childish that he naturally would not fall for it. If he wanted revenge, he had to live. How could he not understand this principle? Looking at Qin Feng, who didn't dare to reply, the ridicule on Tan Tan's face became even more intense. You don't dare to accept the challenge? Trash indeed. I really don't know what kind of parents could give birth to such a trash. It seems that they're also incompetent people. As soon as his voice fell, before he had the time to withdraw his gaze, he suddenly felt an extremely violent and shocking, killing, intense soar into the sky from below. At the same time, a roar that was like the furious roar of a wild beast and carried a strong, killing intent resounded, shocking many people to the point of being stunned. F***CK your mother, die for me. A figure rose from the ground like a cannonball and quickly swept towards Tan Tan, who was standing on a sword in the air. Dragons had reversed scales, and those who touched it would die. Everyone had a bottom line in their heart that they could not cross. Qin Feng could not care about his humiliation and could also endure the hatred in his heart. But his father had given him the most unforgettable care in his childhood. His mother was the person he respected the most and was the softest place in his heart. No one could step into that place, let alone insult it. Anyone who touched that place would die. Qin Feng's sudden change also caused Tan Tan to be slightly stunned. However, she quickly let out a cold laugh. Her eyes contained some disdain as she stared at the figure that was swiftly shooting over. She randomly waved her hand, and a golden light curtain blocked in front of her. You dare to attack me with the strength of a half-step to the peak. You are really overestimating yourself. You are far inferior to your scoundrel brother. Tan Tan sneered and looked at Feng Chun mockingly. Qin Feng coldly stared at the golden light screen. The spiritual energy in his body seemed to be boiling, and along with the Tao Qi, it surged through his meridians. Then it quickly gathered on his arm. Dalian mode. Primal war body. Under the primal chaos light, the veins on his arm wiggled like a dragon. A ferocious wind expanded and contracted on the tip of his fist. Qin Feng clenched his 5 fingers tightly and ruthlessly smashed towards the golden light screen. Buzz! Under the attentive gazes of countless people, Qin Feng's fist heavily smashed onto the light screen. The golden light screen suddenly shook violently. However, it did not shatter. How can a piece of trash like you break through my defense? Tan Tan sneered disdainfully. However, before her sneer could spread, she saw Qin Feng raise his head. His originally indifferent and delicate face became incomparably ferocious. The second door, the strange door, opened. As he shouted in his heart, the power on the tip of his fist surged again. There were even sounds of explosions. Crack! The soundless movement caused countless gazes to harden. The golden light screen cracked. "Break for me." The power on the tip of his fist surged, and golden light surged. The cracks on the golden light screen finally reached their limit. In the end, with a loud bang, under the shocked gazes of countless people, Qin Feng exploded it. Tan Tan stared blankly at the screen of light that had turned into golden light. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Her extremely strong defensive technique had been broken just like that. Tan Tan quickly retreat. When Yihang's shouts sounded out, Tan Tan also quickly recovered. Just as she was about to move, she saw Qin Feng's ferocious face due to his strong killing intent. She was intimidated by his aura and was momentarily stunned. She actually did not dodge. "Go to hell." A low and deep beast-like roar sounded. Qin Feng's palm turned into a claw and grabbed at Tan Tan's throat. His 5 fingers were surging with an unusually powerful energy. As his 5 fingers clenched, everyone could see that the air within his 5 fingers was distorted. At the same time, a sonic boom was continuously emitted. Many people were secretly speechless when they saw this scene. This brat was clearly going for the kill and did not show any mercy. If his 5 fingers clenched, a wisp of her soul would definitely be buried. At this moment, fear finally surfaced on Tan Tan's face. At such a close distance, she could feel just how strong the killing intent on Qin Feng's body was and just how terrifying the power between his 5 fingers was. However, just as Qin Feng's hand was about to clench, a gust of wind suddenly gushed out and forcefully pulled Tan Tan's body back a few steps. Crackle. At the same time, Qin Feng's hand also clenched tightly. A thunderous sound seemed to be emitted from his palm. From this, one could see just how much power was contained in his clench. Crackle. Chapter 578. A powerful combination shook all directions. The pink flame torrent swept out, and the shocking figure was completely swallowed by the flame torrent under the gazes of countless people. The flame swept out, transforming into a gigantic flame energy ball. It emitted an extremely terrifying temperature, causing the surrounding space to completely distort. At the center of the energy ball, a figure was faintly discernible. Clearly, he was being controlled within. Seeing this scene, quite a few people could not help but smack their lips. Originally, it was just a contest between the two of them. Who would have thought that it would actually cause Yi Hong and Xiao Yun to take action at the same time in order to resolve the crisis? Regardless of how miserable Qin Feng was in this battle, whether he lived or died, his name was destined to be remembered by many people. Moreover, many people were beginning to fear him. After all, he had nearly killed Tan Tan in the end. Just this battle achievement alone was something that many people admitted that they were unable to achieve. This woman really deserves it. It's not like he did it. Why does she have to put the blame on him for the bad things that other people's friends did? She even called him a scoundrel and trash and humiliated him. In the end, she even insulted his parents with her venomous mouth. She deserves to live. Quite a few people's gazes were filled with anger. Although they were ruthless people, ambitious and ruthless, and had committed countless crimes and blood debts, they were also bloodthirsty and unyielding. They would also fight openly with others. Humiliating someone's parents was something that they could not do. Tan Tan was still immersed in the soul-stirring moment from earlier. Only when an uproar rang out did she regain her senses. Her hand subconsciously touched her neck, which was still faintly emitting a painful feeling, as the image of Qin Feng's cold and indifferent face filled with ice-cold, killing intent suddenly surfaced in her mind. A wave of palpitations involuntarily gushed out from her heart. However, she was quickly filled with shame and anger. She needed the help of others in order to escape from the hands of the trash that she had called out. She was unable to accept such a situation. Her sharp voice changed a little. "Big Sister Chio, kill him. Burn him to death." At this moment, when the word trash came out from her mouth, some of the gazes below were a little strange. Quite a few people revealed strange expressions as they stared at the shrieking Tan Tan. This fellow had nearly been killed, yet she still called out trash. Didn't that mean that she was even worse than trash? This slap to the face was really loud. Tan Tan, who was blinded by shame and anger, did not notice the change in the eyes below. However, it was impossible for Yi Hong and Qiu Yun not to notice it. At that moment, both of their faces turned somewhat ugly. Tan Tan, shut up, Yi Hong shouted in a deep voice. After being yelled at by Yi Hong, Tan Tan finally regained her senses. When she realized that she had lost her composure, her face became slightly unnatural. She stared at the faintly discernible figure in the pink energy ball, her eyes filled with thick resentment. However, he didn't say anything else. At this moment, everyone's gazes were focused on the giant energy ball. The terrifying temperature caused many people to gulp. This was especially true for Lin Kuei, the young master of the Yin sect, and the disciples of the Small Mountain sect. They knew how domineering this flame was. After being in contact with it for a long time, it could even burn spirit force. If the three of them were surrounded by that kind of flame, it wouldn't take long for them to be burned into charred corpses. Roar! Just as everyone was paying attention to the battle in the air, a violent roar suddenly erupted from below. The wind whistled, sand and stones flew, and the female disciples of the Guanghan Palace were suddenly sent flying. If it weren't for the two Divine Realm experts blocking it, there would have been a lot of losses. Big explosion, don't. Looking at the big explosion that had turned into a green monster, Ren Shi-er's pretty face turned pale. Bang! The big explosion rushed into the sky, its huge tail ruthlessly lashing at Yi Hong and Tan Tan. The big explosion's transformation and attack were too fast. They didn't even have time to react. Yi Hong instinctively shielded Tan Tan and used his back to take the blow. At the same time, he swept out his sword with a backhand. Boom! With a loud bang, the two of them shot down like cannonballs. The big explosion roared as it was swept by the sword chi. Large pieces of scales fell off and blood dripped from its body. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. From the beginning, Taishan Academy was already in such a sorry state. This was something that they hadn't been able to achieve in a short period of time. Whoosh! What evil creature dares to cause trouble in front of me? Yi Hong retreated, his face so gloomy that it could drip water. He waved the long sword in his hand, and terrifying sword chi lingered around it. Ah! Suddenly, an angry roar came from the flames. Then, everyone was shocked to find that the ball of flames was shaking violently. Then, with a bang, it exploded. A figure covered in white flames appeared. Qin Feng's eyes were red. His hand was still in a gesture as he stared at Qiu Yun. "I'll give it back to you," he shouted angrily. Suddenly, the pink flames that filled the sky flowed back and surrounded Qiu Yun. Dao power condenses into three elements mutual generation hand. Qin Feng pushed his palm forward. In the flames, a large three-colored hand stretched out and grabbed at Qiu Yun. "It's you." At this moment, Qiu Yun's eyes narrowed. Thunderbolt slash. Qin Feng took out the thunderbolt sword and slashed at Tan Tan below. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning shot down. Then, Qin Feng turned around. Between his eyebrows, the immortal reincarnation eye opened, and red light lingered. Immortal light. A tyrannical light shot out, aiming at Yi Hong, who was about to attack the explosion. Everyone's mouth was wide open. They looked at this scene in disbelief. This guy actually attacked three people at the same time. "Qin Feng, I really don't dare to kill you," Yi Hong said coldly, panting after barely blocking the impact of the immortal light. "Yi Hong, don't make a big misunderstanding." Suddenly, Qiu Yun shouted in a low voice and opened the three elements mutual generation hand. Misunderstanding? Everyone's expression froze. What was going on? Both sides were about to kill each other, but it was actually a misunderstanding. Qin Feng's heart was also moved. He suppressed the tyrannical killing intent in his heart and secretly stopped the explosion from going further berserk. The latter's huge body wriggled, and a pair of wings covered with green scales appeared on his back. He slowly flapped and floated beside Qin Feng. The low roar carried a strong warning. Yi Hong also suppressed the anger in his heart and did not continue to attack. He looked at the explosion at the moment and was shocked. He did not expect this guy to have such a terrifying helper. Moreover, his strength was abnormal enough that he could safely retreat from Qiu Yun's flames. At this moment, the most shocked one was naturally Tan Tan. She did not expect that even Qiu Yun and Yi Hong, who should have been easy to capture, would still end up in such a sorry state. I've kicked a hardboard. Even if she was arrogant, she had to admit that this combination was strong. If she wanted to eat them, she would have to pay a big price. In Sin City, all the bosses and heroes were shocked. They did not expect that not only was Qin Feng excessively strong, but even the green-scaled monster seemed to be more ferocious than usual in the Colosseum. Not to mention Yi Hong's 3 students, none of them dared to provoke them. Chapter 579. The ancient species appears in the air. A man and a beast were emitting a vicious and ruthless aura, causing others to feel fearful. Qiu Yun's beautiful eyes looked towards Qin Feng, suppressing the shock in her heart, and calmly said, "Your friend does indeed have a grudge with us. He stole something that belongs to us and ran away, so we want to use you to lure him out. Our method may not be appropriate, but we do not have any killing intent towards you or your friend. However, your friend has done something wrong and offended someone he should not have offended, so he should be punished. Since you're related to him, I hope that you can help him. Once the matter becomes serious and there is no turning back, it will not be a good thing for him. We also hope that this matter can be resolved before it worsens." After hearing Qiu Yun's words, Qin Feng finally understood. They wanted to use him to lure Jing Wui out, so they deliberately angered him to make a move so that they could capture him. However, they did not expect Big Popcorn to be by his side. In the end, they realized that if they continued to fight, it would not end well for either side, so they decided to stop fighting. At this moment, Qin Feng's anger had decreased by quite a bit. His eyelids drooped, and he indifferently said, "He is indeed my friend, but we have been separated for a long time. I am also looking for him. Since that is the case, we were rash previously." Qiu Yun lightly nodded her head and said, "Since the misunderstanding has been resolved, we do not need to be at daggers drawn." Qin Feng glanced at Xue Wucheng, Zhou Ji, and the rest, and nodded his head. "I know some of his habits. Once this matter is over, perhaps we can sit down and discuss it calmly." "That is good too." Qiu Yun nodded her head. Qin Feng sneered. With a move of his body, he carried Big Popcorn, who had returned to her human form, and slowly landed on the giant rock under countless gazes. He chose to ignore the gazes that filled the sky. He sat down with his legs crossed, closed his eyes, and quietly adjusted the condition of his body. At this moment, he was not in a good state. He was only holding on and not exploding out. Furthermore, every time he transformed, he would be injured. He could only use the light of primal chaos to cover her so that no one would notice. One could see that beneath the primal chaos light on their bodies, there were cyan streams of air surging forth. That was the power of wood healing their injuries. In midair, Tan Tan's expression was a little ugly. She looked at Qiu Yun and said, "Sister Qiu, why are you so polite to this kind of person? It's not like we can't beat him." "Tan Tan, you're too reckless." Before Qiu Yun could say anything, Yi Hong frowned and said, "In the current situation, we should prioritize the ancient species. As for this person, there is no need for us to use force to coerce him. This guy and that little monster are not simple. We don't need to make enemies for ourselves at this time. Little Tan, you should control your temper. This is not the Heavenly Dragon Empire, nor is it Taishin Academy. This is a lesson for you," Qiu Yun said. Tan Tan pursed her lips. Although she was dissatisfied, she did not say anything. Qiu Yun's beautiful eyes looked at Qin Feng below. After a pause, she suddenly said, "He is the one I mentioned before." "What, it's him?" Yi Hong and Tan Tan were both stunned. Qiu Yun nodded and said, "Not only does he have a very powerful flame, but he also has a very strange and mysterious way of controlling fire. Even my 9 lotus flames was temporarily controlled by him. Since this person has helped me before, there is no need for us to make our relationship so tense. Following the calmness of both parties, the originally hostile atmosphere quietly eased up. Shui Wucheng glanced at Qin Feng. After carefully weighing the situation, he slowly retreated and did not take action again. After Zhou Ji received Su Ye's gaze, he helplessly retracted his hand. Buzz! Suddenly, an obscure ripple was emitted from the Windstream Valley. Soon after, everyone's gazes once again turned and stared intently at the depths of the Windstream Valley. At this moment, the blazing sun shone vertically, and the scorching rays of light dispersed the formidable astral winds in that area. Even the light in that area had become much brighter. Everyone knew that the suppression of Windstream Valley had been reduced to its weakest point. It's noon, and the suppression has been reduced to its weakest point. Sensing this scene, the entire Windstream Valley was stirred up. Countless gazes instantly blazed. Descendant spiritual beast. No one knew who shouted in the valley. Countless gazes turned to look at the depths of the valley. Under the dusky light, a ray of light rapidly streaked across. It was a snow-white rabbit. Its entire body emitted a faint light, as if it was bathed in sacred light. It looked extremely holy. It caused many people's eyes to light up. Whoosh! A figure quickly flew over like lightning. Under this person's lead, everyone could no longer remain calm, and they all rushed towards the depths of the valley. The descendant spiritual beast had appeared. Everyone saw it, and the place instantly boiled up. It could no longer remain calm, as countless figures rushed towards the ray of light. Qin Feng also opened his eyes at this moment. His gaze was somewhat fiery as he stared at the ray of light that streaked across the depths of the valley. Was this the descendant spiritual beast? Let's go. Under Su Yu's command, everyone from the Guanghan Hall moved out. However, she clearly had her own arrangements. Other than a few people who were relatively strong, the others formed into groups of 6 or 7 people and formed into several small teams. They cooperated with each other and rushed towards the depths of Windstream Valley. Windstream Valley completely boiled up as powerful spiritual energies flew everywhere. Everyone attacked without any scruples. At this moment, the so-called alliance and cooperation had become extremely laughable in front of the descendant spiritual beast. Many people attacked with lightning speed. Powerful spiritual energies wrapped around their palms as they tried to catch the snow rabbit that was wrapped in white light. However, what surprised everyone was that this seemingly weak and cute little white rabbit was abnormally powerful. It was impossible to catch it, and its speed was extremely fast. If it wasn't for the fact that there were too many people in this area, not many people would be able to keep up with the speed of this little white rabbit. However, although the snow rabbit's speed was fast, there were too many people in this place. It couldn't display its full speed, so it had to encounter some people trying to catch it. However, even though there were dozens of people attacking it, no one was able to touch a single strand of the rabbit's fur. Every expert that had the chance to catch the snow rabbit would end up with their arms numb from the shock. They cut a sorry figure. A ball of light quickly shuttled through the crowd, but no one was able to catch it. Not only that, but many people also attacked each other. Many people didn't even have the chance to attack before they were seriously injured by others and were forced to withdraw from the battle. Whoosh! The spiritual energies here were berserk, and the entire valley was destroyed beyond recognition. The other descendant spiritual beast that was hiding somewhere was unable to hide and escaped. Chapter 580. It all disappeared. Seeing the appearance of the second ball of light, countless roars of ecstasy suddenly resounded throughout Windstream Valley. Immediately, countless people's eyes turned blood red, and even their breathing became hurried. Spiritual energy whistled as figures gathered their strength and turned into streaks of light. They quickly rushed towards the second ball of light. For a moment, the sound of wind breaking resounded throughout the mountains. The second archaic spirit beast had also appeared, and the scene became even more fiery. The competition had officially entered the incandescent stage. Everyone didn't care about their lives as they tried to catch the archaic spirit beast. Their spirit chi created a monstrous wave, and a violent wind blew. The sky was filled with figures like locusts. However, regardless of whether it was the first or the second one, they were both exceptionally difficult to catch. Some lucky people only managed to catch it once before they were forced to retreat. Only the stronger ones were able to barely hold on. However, that was all. The resistance of the descendant spiritual beast was too intense. Even Su Yu, and the other strong ones were unable to catch it. Time slowly passed in this intense battle. In less than half an hour, everyone felt as if many days had passed. The main reason was that the battle here was too intense. Every minute and every second was a huge crisis. Some unlucky fellows would be seriously injured or even die here. Everyone had no choice but to raise their state of mind to the peak as they were extremely nervous. In this kind of battle, the slightest bit of carelessness could lead to destruction. In this kind of intense battle, everyone's energy consumption was extremely high. Everyone's speed and the fierceness of their attacks had decreased. Of course, the two descendant spiritual beasts that were beaten up by the group had also consumed a lot of energy. They were no longer as fierce as before. Boom! With a loud bang, a sudden oppressive and terrifying wind burst out. A figure quickly streaked across the sky and finally stopped in front of a ball of light. He slapped down with one hand, and vigorous spiritual energy squeezed in from all directions, tightly surrounding the ball of light. Yihong! Many people cried out in surprise. However, when the surrounding strong ones saw that the latter was about to catch a ball of light, they could not help but sneer. This was because they had already seen how demonic this ball of light was. Previously, the 5-2 Heaven Stage expert had tried to intercept it. In the end, he was fooled by this ball of light. Although Yihong's strength far exceeded theirs, in this place, just relying on brute force was obviously useless. Therefore, some of the experts who had originally wanted to intervene were forced to do so. Instead, he stopped and allowed Yihong to grab the ball of light. Clearly, he wanted to see Yihong suffer. Sure enough, when Yihong grabbed the ball of light, the little monkey inside began to struggle violently, causing the surrounding space to ripple. Yihong's body also trembled violently. Clearly, it was extremely strenuous for him. However, just when everyone thought that Yihong was about to fail, the latter's trembling body gradually calmed down. Although the little monkey was still struggling fiercely, for some unknown reason, the violent vibrations caused by its resistance made it feel as if one's fist was smashing into cotton. It was obviously a huge tremor, but when the power gradually dissipated, it was weakened by the famous model. When they saw this scene, the other experts were stunned. Soon after, their gazes turned complicated as they looked towards Yihong in the air with unfriendly expressions. Whoosh! However, before these people could do anything, a huge torrent of flames whizzed over and turned into a ring of flames. It whistled and burned around Yihong, releasing a terrifying temperature. Seeing this, many experts were unwilling to give up. With Xiaoyun's protection, if they fought again, their chances of winning were obviously not high. Moreover, there was still a remnant spirit beast. Before the two remnant spirit beasts belonged to someone else, it was not worth it to fight with them. Therefore, many people's expressions eased a lot and began to focus on the other remnant spirit beast. However, not everyone thought so. Second on the formidable person list, Su Yu third, Su Yi fourth, Zhu Xia, fifth, Bo Jian, seventh, Jiang Nan, eighth, Zhou Ji. The 6 experts in the top 10 of the formidable person list all looked at Yihong. No matter what, their verbal alliance was still somewhat effective. Therefore, they immediately targeted Yihong and Xiaoyun. Everyone, this is too much. Xiaoyun's beautiful eyes stared coldly at the 6 people surrounding them. Hee. Only the capable ones know about the archaic remains. We don't need to talk about such a simple principle. Su chuckled and did not waste any more words. Vigorous spiritual energy swept out. At the same time, Su Yu, Bo Jian, and the others did not hold back and attacked one after another. In the face of external enemies, they were still considered united. After the 2 archaic remains appeared, everyone's eyes were burning with passion as they fought over them. However, they did not notice that two people had quietly left. These two people were naturally Qin Feng and the big flower explosion. Both of them suffered serious injuries. Because he could not show the slightest abnormality in front of everyone and arouse suspicion, he had been holding on. It was only when everyone was attracted by the archaic remains that he found an opportunity to sneak away. Although the fierce battle did not really happen in the end, he had temporarily opened the second door. Therefore, regardless of whether he fought or not, the backlash from a forbidden technique was inevitable. Since both of them were injured, Qin Feng did not dare to stay here for too long. As for the archaic remains, he could only give up on them. However, he did not leave and instead hid in the dark to heal his injuries. In fact, he was a little hopeful that the fight for the archaic remains would not end so quickly. Qin Feng did not know what happened in the battle in Windstream Valley. He only felt that there were extremely terrifying fluctuations erupting from that direction again and again. After that, it fell into silence. He thought that it was over, but after the movement disappeared for half a day, he did not see anyone return. This surprised him. No matter who got the archaic remains, they would definitely return. However, half a day had passed, and not a single person was seen. Did something happen? Qin Feng was surprised. Although he did not know what happened, he was sure that something must have happened there. Fortunately, after half a day of healing and the magical effects of the divine would seal, he had almost recovered. The main thing was that he had temporarily opened the second door. He did not experience a big battle, and the injuries he suffered were only from the backlash from the strange door. It was not too serious. After the big flower explosion, he had recovered more than half. As long as he did not transform, he would not be affected. Chapter 581. Mysterious Ancient Tomb. The entire Windstream Valley was in ruins and covered in blood. Without a doubt, there had been a fierce battle here. But where were the people? Apart from some corpses, there was no one alive. It was too strange. He was on the way back, healing his wounds while paying attention to the situation. Therefore, it was impossible for him to not notice that those people had left. Therefore, there was only one possibility. Those people had all disappeared from the Windstream Valley. Qin Feng felt a chill down his spine. Those were the elites of the entire Sin City. It was too scary for them to disappear so mysteriously. However, at this moment, there was a violent tremor. Then, an indescribable wave of energy swept out from the depths of the Windstream Valley like a hurricane. It was so powerful that Qin Feng's expression changed drastically. He stared at the depths of the Windstream Valley in shock. There were rays of light blooming and auspicious qi gushing out. At first glance, it was as if there was a sudden fog, making it difficult to see. Rays of light curled up, mist surged, and chaos surged. Then, a wide stone door slowly appeared. The stone door was in the midst of chaos, surrounded by rays of light and chaotic mist. It was extremely mysterious. On the stone door, there were complex and mysterious light patterns that wriggled, emitting a strange and indescribable aura. This is an ancient tomb. Qin Feng was stunned. He knew a little about the legend of the ancient tomb in the White Treasure Mountain. According to the legend, there was a mysterious ancient tomb hidden in the White Treasure Mountain. There were amazing treasures hidden inside, but the ancient tomb would only appear at a specific time and place. Very few people had seen it. 99% of the people who entered the White Treasure Mountain had never seen it before. Judging from Rinche, Su Yu, and the rest of Sin City's people's indifferent attitude towards Baoshan's treasure, Qin Feng knew that those rumors were most likely fabricated by people. Therefore, he gave up on the idea of searching for the treasure. He did not expect the mysterious ancient tomb to really exist and to suddenly appear at this time. Ancient tomb. There really is an ancient tomb. The shock on Qin Feng's face slowly faded. Now he finally understood why those people had disappeared. They must have entered the ancient tomb. The ancient tomb will only appear at a special time. It seems like this is the special time. Qin Feng nodded. Rumble. When the runes on the stone door dimmed, the stone door trembled slightly. Then it split into two from the middle, and the stone door opened. Buzz! As the stone door was opened, an ancient aura gushed out, causing him to enter a momentary trance. It was as if he had heard the sounds of thousands of soldiers and horses fighting. Qin Feng's heart trembled. He quickly bit the tip of his tongue and sobered up. Without hesitation, he pulled exploding flowers and rushed into the stone door. Just as he entered the stone door, everything before him turned blurry. Immediately after, an oppressive feeling came over him. It was as if there was a mysterious power that enveloped this place, causing the spiritual energy flowing in his body to become slightly sluggish. As he felt this oppressive feeling, a grave expression involuntarily flashed across Qin Feng's eyes. He lifted his gaze and saw that there were over a dozen passageways that led deep into the vast hall. There were also many bloodstains on the ground. Qin Feng looked around. There were over a dozen passageways. He didn't know which one to take, so he could only choose one at random. The ancient tomb was very large. The passageways were connected to each other and branched out into many paths. It was dazzling. Qin Feng and exploding flowers walked inside for a long time, but they didn't find anything special. However, from the bloodstains and broken limbs along the way, it could be concluded that a lot of treasures must have been found in the ancient tomb, causing various wars to break out. Damn it! Along the way, Qin Feng also saw many destroyed stone rooms. The things inside had been swept away. There was no doubt that the treasures hidden in the ancient tomb had been taken away in advance. This made him quite depressed. What's there to be depressed about? These are just small profits to confuse people. The real good things are still in the depths of the ancient tomb. The demon, I suddenly said. Qin Feng was overjoyed. Looking at the dazzling and complicated passageways, he quickly asked, "Old demon, do you know the way?" He was late for half a day. If he had to slowly search by himself, it would have been too late. I can sense some strange fluctuations. Let's go. The demon eye's response made Qin Feng breathe a sigh of relief. Under its lead, they walked for more than an hour before gradually approaching the depths. When he arrived here, he could see some people coming and going in groups of twos and threes. There were individual loose cultivators and groups of several people. When these people saw him, they were all surprised and quickly retreated with fear. Qin Feng didn't pay attention to these people and sped up into the depths. Therefore, they continued to move forward at full speed. After another 10 minutes or so, the seemingly endless tunnel finally became spacious. Loud rumbling noises and clamoring noises also transformed into rolling sound waves that spread over. Qin Feng and the big explosion slowed down a little. Mental energy covered their bodies, and they slowly walked out of the passageway. Outside the passageway was an extremely vast hall that was similar to a square. There were several passageways around the hall that led to this place. At this moment, there were already quite a number of figures in this large hall. At a rough glance, it was likely that there were at least a dozen of them. Moreover, Qin Feng also saw Su Yi, the young master of the Yin sect, the whole clan, and the others among them. Boom, boom. However, at this moment, it was clear that they did not have the energy to sense anything else. Hence, they did not notice Qin Feng's arrival. Everyone in the square was using all their strength to unleash numerous powerful attacks that smashed towards the light barrier in the midair of the large hall. The combined attacks of so many people also caused layers of ripples to repeatedly appear on the light barrier. Qin Feng's gaze swept across the light barrier, after which his gaze focused on the numerous dancing light figures within the light barrier. Through the thin light barrier, he could faintly see that those light figures seemed to be in the form of blades and swords, cauldrons, and other similar objects. Heaven artifacts. Looking at these figures, Qin Feng's pupils immediately shrunk. He deeply inhaled a breath of cold air. These figures were actually all heaven artifacts. What a big deal! Qin Feng muttered to himself. 5 heaven artifacts had actually appeared in this place. I really don't know how powerful the owner of this tomb is. Qin Feng couldn't help but sigh in his heart. The fact that 5 heaven artifacts had appeared in this place meant that the owner of this tomb was unimaginably powerful when he was alive. Trying his best to suppress his rapidly beating heart, Qin Feng's gaze swept across the hall. He discovered that almost everyone was staring at the 5 heaven artifacts within the light barrier with a fanatical and greedy expression. They were now working together to break the light barrier and seize the treasures. At that time, in order to seize these heaven artifacts, one could imagine that an extremely fierce battle would erupt here. For the sake of the heaven artifacts, it was worth it to risk one's life. One must know that the heaven artifacts here were different from those of Yihong and the others. They were personally refined by the experts of Imperial Mystery Academy. Even if an ordinary person obtained them, they might not be able to use them. In order to control a heaven artifact, one must first obtain its approval. Chapter 582. Why Jade Lotus Seat? The reason why they were so afraid of Yihong and the others, other than their tyrannical strength, was mainly because they had heaven weapons that could greatly increase their combat power. This was also why Su Yu and Su Yu were not weaker than Yihong and Xiao Yun. But if they really fought, they would most likely lose. Because they did not have heaven weapons to support themselves, they were at an absolute disadvantage. If any of them could obtain a heaven weapon, it could be said that they had the capital to compete with Su Yu and Su Yu. Of course, the premise was that the gap between their strength was not too big. So, with so many heaven weapons appearing here, how could these people not go crazy? Their enthusiasm for heaven weapons might not be weaker than the surviving species' spiritual beasts. Qin Feng's eyes flashed as he stood at the back of the crowd. Since no one had discovered him, why should he get involved? It was better to wait for the light curtain to break before making his move. When Qin Feng was looking around, he suddenly realized that Yihong and the other 2 students from Taishan Academy did not seem to be among these figures. This was the deepest part of the ancient tomb, and all the good treasures were here. Although Yihong and the others might not be as thirsty as them, it was impossible for them to ignore it at all. Qin Feng's eyes flashed, and in the next moment, he fiercely focused. Could it be that there are other treasures here? Also, who has the 2 Archean surviving species? This thought suddenly flashed in Qin Feng's mind, causing his expression to change slightly. Indeed, after he returned to Wind Valley, he did not find the 2 Archean surviving species. Now, only Yihong and the other 2 were missing. What was going on? Qin Feng did not believe that the 3 of them had snatched the 2 Archean surviving species. No one, no force, would dare to monopolize the 2 Archean surviving species. But if the surviving species' spiritual beasts are not here, where could they be? And where did the 3 of them go? This ancient tomb is a little unusual. While Qin Feng was puzzled, the demon eye's voice suddenly sounded. He was stunned and frowned as he asked, "What do you mean? If I'm not wrong, the main hall of the ancient tomb that you're in now may only be the tip of the iceberg of the entire ancient tomb. It is just the entrance." Upon hearing this, Qin Feng's pupils constricted violently. If there was only one entrance to such a huge tomb, then what was hidden behind the entrance? Those students are not to be trifled with. There should be some powerful existences in that academy. They have special sensing methods, so they might have entered first, Mo Yin said. Qin Feng's eyes turned red as he asked, "Old devil, is there a way to get in?" The ancient tomb with 5 heaven artifacts and numerous treasures was only the entrance. From this, it could be seen that the things inside were definitely more precious. Since those people had entered first, Qin Feng was naturally anxious. He couldn't allow all the good things to fall into their hands. There's no hurry. The better the item, the harder it is to obtain it. Mo Yin smiled and said, "Aren't you tempted by these 5 heaven artifacts?" "Of course I am," Qin Feng softly muttered to himself. Soon after, he suppressed these feelings. As he stared at the gigantic light barrier, his eyes crazily flickered. Vigorous spiritual energy flowed through his meridians like a flood, ready to be unleashed at any time. Everyone was also ecstatic as they stared at the flashing heaven artifacts in the light barrier, ready to snatch them at any time. "White Jade Lotus Seat," Mo Yin said. Qin Feng was taken aback. He looked at the palm-sized connected seat that seemed to be made of white jade at the corner of the light barrier. His brows furrowed slightly. Not only was he unable to see anything different about this item, he could sense that the energy ripples emitted by this item were the weakest among the 5 heaven artifacts. Why did you choose this? It seems to be the worst, right? Qin Feng asked in his heart. But it's the most suitable for you. And Mo Yin smiled. Why? Because it's a flight-type heaven artifact. Qin Feng was stunned for a moment before he nodded in understanding. Once one's strength reached the 9th layer heaven stage, one would be able to draw on the energy of heaven and earth. For them, flight was no longer important. At this level, people paid more attention to the improvement of their combat strength. So these masters would definitely choose heaven artifacts with high lethality. They would not pay too much attention to the white jade lotus seat, which was not of much help to them in flight. But Yang Kai was different. Firstly, he had the Thunder Suppression Sword, which was also a heaven artifact with high lethality. Another heaven artifact would just be icing on the cake. Secondly, he had not reached the 9th layer heaven stage yet. Although he could fly, the consumption was not small, making it unsuitable for aerial combat. With a flight-type heaven artifact, he could make up for this shortcoming, which could be described as timely help. Thirdly, the competition for the white jade lotus seat was the least, so his chances of successfully snatching it were very high. Taking all these factors into consideration, this flight-type white jade lotus seat was indeed the best for him. Under the wild and violent attacks of the crowd, the light barrier in the midair also became dim. It appeared to be on the verge of collapse, as though it was about to shatter. Upon seeing this scene, the atmosphere in the large hall suddenly became a little strange. The people who were originally standing close to each other also simultaneously spread apart. Their eyes were filled with caution. Qin Feng had also sensed the strange atmosphere, but was not surprised. Under the temptation of a heaven artifact, this was a very normal thing. The light barrier in the air grew dimmer and dimmer under the repeated bombardment. Everyone's hearts suddenly became nervous at this moment. Some people had even stealthily taken out their weapons. Asterisk crack. Asterisk all of a sudden, a faint shattering sound rang out. In an instant, the hall became absolutely silent. Everyone's eyes were tightly glued to the cracks that were slowly spreading on the light barrier. Asterisk crack. Asterisk crack. Asterisk the cracks rapidly expanded in everyone's eyes. In the end, they had covered almost every corner of a light barrier. Asterisk bang. Asterisk a moment later, when the cracks on the light barrier reached its limit, it was finally unable to endure and exploded with a loud bang, turning into countless fragments of light that scattered down from the sky. Asterisk boom. Asterisk at the instant when the light screen exploded, the hall, which had been silent for a moment, erupted with vigorous spiritual energy. Everyone's eyes turned blood red at this moment. Their figures leaped into the air, greedily grabbing at the few heavenly artifacts that were exposed in the air. Do it! The instant these people made their move, Qin Feng also pushed off the ground with the tip of his foot, his figure leaping into the air. Just as he had expected, the majority of the people could not suppress the greed in their hearts and directly rushed towards the 4 heaven artifacts that had the strongest energy fluctuations and were suitable to be used in battle. In contrast, the number of people fighting for the white jade lotus seat was much lesser. Only 2 heavenly stage practitioners were paying attention to it. Seeing this scene, Qin Feng coldly chuckled in his heart. His figure turned and directly rushed towards the white jade lotus seat that had the least number of people fighting for it. A flying-type heaven artifact was indeed a necessity for him. No matter what, he had to obtain it. At this thought, Qin Feng glanced at the 2 heavenly stage practitioners who were also rushing towards the white jade lotus seat, a cold glint flashing across his eyes. Chapter 583. Zhou first battle. The 2 figures charged straight towards the white jade lotus that was floating in mid-air, their eyes blazing with passion. Qin Feng hid in the air and slowly approached the 2. In the next moment, he suddenly burst out. In an instant, he opened the gate of life, activated the primal war body, and used the Dao Yin mode to raise his essence, energy, and spirit to the peak. Then, he punched out heavily. Poochie! Immediately, one of the experts spat out a mouthful of blood and fell down. Obviously, he was seriously injured by Qin Feng's all-out attack. Who's attacking? The other person was shocked. In his panic, he did not sense Qin Feng's existence. However, when he reacted and sensed the special fluctuation, it was too late. A fierce force exploded in his chest and shot out. He returned in the same way he came. After quickly getting rid of the two competitors, Qin Feng came to the side of the white jade lotus and tried to grab it. Buzz! However, just as his hand came into contact with the white jade lotus seed, an extremely strong resistance suddenly erupted from the lotus seed, forcefully pushing his hand away. Boom! Seeing that the thing resisted automatically, Qin Feng was shocked. Even the thunder suppression sword was not so exaggerated. You have the key that fell from the mysterious heavenly steel and have been recognized by the treasure room. However, these heaven artifacts have restrictions and will not be so easily subdued. As if he knew what Qin Feng was thinking, the demon eye smiled and said, Boom! Qin Feng was about to continue when an extremely violent spiritual energy fluctuation suddenly surged from behind him. This caused his face to darken. He turned his head and saw another divine stage expert staring at him with an ominous glint in his eyes. Of course, he sensed his existence. Friend, since you're here, why don't you show yourself? The man said. Qin Feng ignored him and rushed towards him. How dare you? Seeing this, the middle-aged man shouted and quickly circulated the spiritual energy in his body. Then he punched out. The two fists collided in midair. The middle-aged man's body trembled, and he quickly retreated. Qin Feng's figure was slowly exposed, starting from his outstretched fist. His mind power had been shattered during the exchange. How powerful! The middle-aged man raised his head, and when he saw Qin Feng, his eyes narrowed. To think that it was this monster. He had seen how powerful Qin Feng and the big flower explosion were when they joined forces, and his expression became more and more solemn. However, Qin Feng didn't give him much time to catch his breath. His attacks were like a storm as they enveloped the middle-aged man. After exchanging a few blows, the middle-aged man could not help but feel a sense of fear. Thinking about the green scale monster that had yet to appear, he decided to leave. One Qin Feng was already abnormal enough. With the addition of the war beast tyrant, only Su Yu, Su Yi, and the others could deal with him. With regard to his departure, Qin Feng did not form a pack of wolves. He swiftly turned his head and was just about to make a move to snatch the white jade lotus seed when he suddenly discovered that a suction force had erupted from a short distance away. Moreover, the suction force had enveloped the white jade lotus seed. Another person had joined the ranks of snatching the white jade lotus seed. Qin Feng's eyes slightly sunk when he saw this scene. He turned his gaze, and his expression changed. This was because the person who had attacked was the 8th on the ambitious person list, Zhou Hen, who had a grudge with him. While Qin Feng's expression was changing, Zhou Ji, who was not far away, glanced at him indifferently. The threat in his eyes was extremely strong. It was obvious that he was warning him not to make a move. He's still trying to take advantage of me. Qin Feng angrily cursed in his heart. He didn't want to have any grudges with Zhou Ji. He had ignored Zhou Ji's attitude many times. He didn't expect Zhou Ji to not know how to restrain himself and become even more arrogant. Qin Feng's expression was gloomy. He coldly snorted in his heart. He casually waved his hand and released a wave of spiritual energy. It directly blocked Zhou Ji's suction force. Then, his figure flashed and once again swept towards the white jade lotus seed. Brat, you've got guts. Do you really think that your performance outside can make me, Zhou Ji, afraid of you? Seeing that Qin Feng had actually made a move, Zhou Ji's expression became gloomy in an instant. A fierce light flashed in his eyes. Fierce spiritual energy quickly condensed in front of him and turned into a fierce palm print. It fiercely blasted towards Qin Feng's back. However, facing Zhou Ji's attack, Qin Feng did not show any signs of turning back. He quickly put on the heavenly armor and, at the same time, pulled out the thunder suppression sword and swept it behind him. Bang! A bolt of lightning struck Zhou Ji's palm print. After a moment of stalemate, the lightning dissipated and the remaining force of the palm print blasted onto Qin Feng's back. A sharp pain came from his back, causing Qin Feng's body to stagger. However, it was this force that allowed him to speed up and arrive in front of the white jade lotus seat. He hurriedly took 2 steps forward and finally grabbed the white jade lotus seat in his hand. Buzz! When Qin Feng grabbed it, the white jade lotus seat struggled again. However, this time, Qin Feng was prepared. Spiritual energy gathered in his palm and wrapped around the white jade lotus seat. His hand also tightly held onto it. Qin Feng would not let go even if he was beaten to death. However, the white jade lotus seat's struggle became more and more intense and crazy. It actually caused his arm to become numb. Damn it! Seeing this situation, Qin Feng's face turned ashen. He had spent so much effort and even endured Zhou Ji's attack. If he were to lose to this guy, wouldn't that be too funny? Just as Qin Feng was bitterly holding on, the demon eye's voice suddenly sounded. Sealed by time, the spiritual treasure has a spirit and will resist anyone. If you want to suppress it, you must have absolute strength or something of a higher level. Hearing this, Qin Feng was stunned. Then, he frowned and his eyes flashed. This kind of suppression makes it impossible for me to use my full strength. Using strength to suppress it shouldn't work. Something of a higher level? Qin Feng's expression kept changing. In the end, his eyes suddenly focused, and the word sky-splitting axe suddenly appeared in his mind. That's right, the origin of this axe was too mysterious. It was definitely not an ordinary item. Thinking of this, Qin Feng put away the thunder suppression sword and quickly took out the sky-splitting axe. Looking at Qin Feng, who was using his own strength to grab the heaven weapon, Zhou Ji's face became extremely gloomy. His figure suddenly flashed, and his spiritual energy madly gathered. He fiercely slapped at Qin Feng. If he was hit, Qin Feng would at least be seriously injured. Although the heavenly armor was a defensive treasure, it did not mean that it could ignore powerful attacks time and time again. Qin Feng also felt Zhou Ji's tyrannical attack. His face was ashen. At this time, he was using all his strength to resist the resistance of the white jade lotus seat. He could not spare any energy to deal with Zhou Ji unless he threw away the white jade lotus seat. Once the heaven weapon is thrown away, it will be even more difficult to snatch it back. However, if I am seriously injured, it is still a problem whether I can leave this place. Chapter 584. Got it to Heaven Realm? Qin Feng's expression changed when he sensed the sudden attack. Another 2 Heaven Realm expert was too much of a threat to him. However, he had the white jade lotus throne in his hand and Zhou Ji blocking his escape route. Even if he threw away the heaven artifact, he wouldn't be able to defend himself in time. He couldn't dodge it. However, Qin Feng's expression only lasted for a moment before he recovered. He sensed that the target of the attack wasn't him, but Zhou Ji who was behind him. The tyrannical spiritual energy wind brushed past him and whistled towards Zhou Ji. The latter's expression changed drastically. He crazily urged the spiritual energy in his body to collide with the spiritual energy wind. Boom! As soon as they collided, the 2 tyrannical attacks exploded like bombs. Zhou Ji didn't expect someone to attack him at such a critical moment. Therefore, he was forced to retreat and heavily hit the stone wall in the distance. He couldn't help but cough out a mouthful of blood. This isn't interference, it's a killing blow, Qin Feng said solemnly. He originally thought that Suyu had helped him, but now it seemed that wasn't the case. Qin Feng suddenly raised his head. It was just as he expected. It wasn't Suyu, but an unfamiliar young man. The latter was looking at him with a kind smile. Qin Feng was stunned for a moment before he recovered. He had seen this person before. He was an elite from the House of Bai. Brother Bai, you still have the mood to help others. Looks like you don't have much pressure. Do you want me to play with you? Suddenly, a soft voice sounded. A figure quickly flew over and stopped not far from Baiyu. He was staring at the latter with a cold smile. Since Brother Hua has such an intention, how can I not accompany you? Baiyu smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in his smile. He glanced at Qin Feng and spread his hands helplessly, meaning that he could only help up to this point. The rest was up to Qin Feng. Nodding his head, Qin Feng didn't delay. He quickly mobilized his spiritual energy and poured it into the heaven-splitting axe. Then, with a bang, he combined the heaven-splitting axe and the white jade lotus seat. Qin Feng didn't know how to use a treasure to suppress another treasure, so he could only rely on luck. Buzz! Just as his spiritual energy poured into the sky-splitting axe, the latter trembled slightly and emitted an extremely soft, buzzing sound. A strange fluctuation flowed from his body through his meridians and into his palm. Then it spread to the frantically struggling precious weapon. Just as the ripples spread out, the frantic struggle of the white jade lotus seat came to an abrupt halt. Even the fluorescence on its surface dimmed. Faintly, Qin Feng seemed to feel a sense of fear emanating from the white jade lotus seat. Looking at the white jade lotus seat that suddenly became as docile as a kitten, Qin Feng's heart was filled with pleasant surprise. With a flip of his palm, he immediately stored it into his space ring. Huh! Qin Feng couldn't help but laugh. With this kind of flying heaven artifact, his combat ability in the air would be greatly improved when he fought against 9th-stage heavenly realm masters in the future. He even felt that even if he faced masters like Su Yu and Yi Hong now, it would be much easier. But soon, he found that the atmosphere was a little different. The surroundings were too quiet, and only his carefree laughter echoed. Qin Feng came to his senses, and the smile on his face instantly disappeared, becoming indifferent. At this time, the battle for the heaven artifact had also come to an end. Su Yu and Su Yu each obtained one, while the other two were obtained by the Yin sect's young master and the Mountain Gate sect's Little Mountain Gate. The heaven artifact had an owner, but many people were dissatisfied. The source of this dissatisfaction was mostly Qin Feng. After all, the prestige of the first two in Sin City was too great, and no one dared to offend them. The second two came from two great forces, and they were also feared. It seemed that only Qin Feng was a lone ranger. Many people's eyes began to flicker. More and more people surged into this place. Most of them revealed regretful expressions when they heard that the heaven artifact here already had an owner. However, when some news spread out, some people's eyes lit up and the gazes they used to look at Qin Feng changed. Qin Feng naturally felt the changes in the eyes of the people around him. His face was indifferent as he clenched his hand and the heaven-splitting axe appeared in a flash. A sharp aura suddenly burst out like a sharp blade. I, Qin Feng, want this heaven artifact. If anyone is dissatisfied, feel free to make a move. His voice carried a bit of coldness as it swept through the hall like a cold wind. His voice was fierce and unquestionable, seeming exceptionally domineering and overbearing. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The experts of the Hua clan and the young master of the Yin sect also looked at Qin Feng with sneers in their eyes. In their eyes, Qin Feng's move was extremely stupid. Did he think that with his strength, he could keep the treasure artifact? In the distance, Lin Kuei, Bo Jian, and the others' expressions were not very good. In terms of strength, they were not inferior to the young master of the Yin sect. However, the heaven artifact was not a one-on-one battle. At this time, the benefits of a force were highlighted. No matter how powerful one was, it was impossible to contend against an entire force. In the other two directions, Hui Yuan and Bai Yu were both staring at Qin Feng. The former's eyes were filled with cold covetousness and greed, while the latter's expression was somewhat complicated. He had helped Qin Feng just now because Qin Feng was close to the Guanghan Palace. However, it was more because the person who attacked him was Zhou Ji. If it had been someone else, Bai Yu was not confident that he would have given up on the heaven artifact and made a move immediately. Now that the final heavenly artifact had landed in Qin Feng's hands, it seemed to be the easiest one to seize. Although he didn't want to be the first to seize it, if there was really an opportunity, he might as well grab it. In fact, with the strength of the House of Bai and the whole clan, they should have been popular candidates for the Heaven Artifact. However, the two clans had deep grudges against each other and always wanted to interfere with each other so that the other would gain nothing. However, they did not expect to benefit others in the end. Feeling the biting cold aura emanating from Qin Feng's body, many people were slightly hesitant. They all knew about Qin Feng's performance outside, so no one wanted to be the first to do so. For a moment, the atmosphere in the large hall was somewhat strange. Upon seeing this, Qin Feng's expression was calm. The spiritual energy in his body began to circulate. Then, he suddenly clenched his hand, and the white jade lotus seed from before appeared in his hand. Biting the tip of his tongue, he spat out a mouthful of essence blood. At the same time, mental energy surged and wrapped around the ball of essence blood, directly fusing it into the white jade lotus seed in his hand. Buzz, buzz! As the essence blood fused into the Heaven Artifact, the surface of the latter immediately glowed with a white light. Then, the light grew brighter, and the originally unremarkable lotus seed immediately flickered with a faint glow. It was as if it had been cleansed of dust, blossoming with the elegance it should have. Bastard, you actually dare to use your blood to bind it to you. Qin Feng's actions were extremely swift. Therefore, when the Heaven Artifact completed its transformation, the crowd only regained their senses. Immediately, their faces were as black as the bottom of a pot. Previously, the white jade lotus seed was an ownerless object. Whoever was the first to plant their essence blood in it would be called the owner of the Heaven Artifact. Now, it was very obvious that Qin Feng had already completely taken possession of this Heaven Artifact. Although they could still erase the essence blood brand if they snatched it back, it would be extremely troublesome. Chapter 585. Mysterious ruins. The atmosphere in the hall suddenly turned silent as the hearts of the various experts surged. They were extremely afraid of the explosion. Back then, she was an existence that could send Yi Hong flying with a single move. No one dared to provoke her. Qin Feng coldly glanced at the crowd. Now that things had come to this, he no longer needed to hide his strength. Facing these ruthless and ambitious characters who didn't care about their lives, he had to display a sufficiently domineering attitude to make them feel apprehensive. If you don't want to die, you can come and fight, Qin Feng loudly said. However, just as the atmosphere became more and more tense, an unforeseen event suddenly occurred. Suddenly, an endless amount of golden light erupted from the ground that was covered in cracks. Like a wriggling ocean, golden ripples spread out. In the end, under the dumbfounded gazes of countless people, it turned into a giant golden vortex. The golden whirlpool slowly rotated as it became faster and faster. A suction force also rapidly grew from weak to strong. Boom! The golden whirlpool suddenly exploded as it violently rotated. A black hole appeared at the center, like a whirlpool in the deep sea, bottomless. At the same time, an extremely strong suction force suddenly erupted. Actually, at the instant when the golden vortex erupted, Qin Feng, who was above the vortex, had already felt that something was not right. However, before he had the time to leave, the suction force had already acted on his body. It was forcefully pulling him towards the bottom of the golden whirlpool. Qin Feng's face was abnormally ugly. No matter how he struggled, his body was slowly being pulled into the whirlpool. It was as if his body was imprisoned and any resistance was futile. Finally, Qin Feng was pulled into the black hole at the center of the golden whirlpool and completely disappeared. The sudden situation caused everyone's face to drastically change as they all wanted to escape. However, the suction force of the whirlpool had increased, and everyone in the hall was passively sucked into the whirlpool. Even Su Yi, and the rest were sucked into it. Countless figures were sucked into the black hole like a swarm of locusts. Qin Feng was absent-minded for an instant, before he instantly regained his senses. Just as he was about to flee, he was once again startled. What appeared before his eyes was a dark gray tunnel. He could not see the end of the tunnel, but it was not dark either. No matter how deep he went, it would always remain dark, which was somewhat mysterious. What is this place? Qin Feng's eyes cautiously observed his surroundings. Suddenly, he saw that there were quite a number of cracks of varying depths on the ground not far away. There were also quite a number of white bone fragments and traces of fire. Clearly, a battle had occurred here. Sure enough, Yi Hong and Qiu Yin have been here. Qin Feng whispered. He now understood that when they were fighting for the heaven artifact, they had inadvertently touched the entrance. As this thought flashed across his mind, Qin Feng's heart was also burning with excitement. What was hidden behind this ancient tomb? He was also very tempted. Qin Feng slowly walked through the messy passageway. Although he did not encounter any more treasures, he did not encounter any obstructions either. It seems that Yi Hong and the rest had cleaned up the place thoroughly. All obstructions had been forcefully destroyed by them. Seeing this situation, Qin Feng could not help but increase his speed as he quickly rushed inside. After another 10 minutes, an unlatched stone door appeared in front of him. Looking at the unlatched stone door, Qin Feng's heart slightly sank. It seems that Yi Hong and the rest had arrived here before him. Since I've mysteriously arrived here, I have to take a look no matter what. In front of the door, Qin Feng hesitated for a moment before his figure flashed and entered through the unlatched door. As Qin Feng entered through the stone door, the surrounding darkness completely dissipated. When Qin Feng's gaze was cast towards the back of the stone door, his face instantly froze. His mouth was slightly agape as a speechless shock softly sounded out from his mouth. This is a ruin? The vast and desolate land was completely silent. An ancient vicissitude spread from the land, causing the entire space to ripple with a lonely feeling. This was the first feeling Qin Feng had when he entered this space. It was very desolate and ancient, as if his soul was covered in dust. It was very stifling. Where's this? Qin Feng stood on a high slope and stared into the distance. In the distant horizon, the mountain ranges were stacked on top of each other, extending endlessly. And the most conspicuous thing was still in the middle of the mountain range. Numerous palaces were situated there, towering in the horizon. However, these palaces were all in a state of dilapidation. Some of them had already collapsed completely, while others had more than half collapsed. This was a group of dilapidated halls, as if they had experienced a great battle. Even so, it was difficult to conceal their grandeur. It was likely that they had once been incomparably glorious. I wonder what this place is to think that it could be hidden in this space. Qin Feng's heart trembled as he gazed at the halls in the distance. Although they appeared to be in a rather dilapidated state, their scale was still shocking. Moreover, they seemed to be somewhat similar to the mysterious world below the heavenly secret pavilion. They were both dilapidated and desolate. This should be a powerful sect in the past, but it seems to have suffered a great calamity. A powerful expert took action and sealed this place. The demonic, I said faintly. This is the ruin of an ancient sect? Qin Feng was shocked. It seems so now. The demonic, I nodded. But it's too dilapidated. It's very normal. Every time the heavenly fissures and the invasion of the foreign tribes, it's a world-ending catastrophe. If I'm not wrong, this sect also experienced the heavenly fissures, just like the sealed space on the third level of the heavenly secret pavilion. Qin Feng's mouth twitched. What the hell was the heavenly fissures? Why was it so terrifying? A world-ending catastrophe. He could imagine that during a period of time in the ancient era, after the heavenly fissures and the invasion of the foreign tribes, an extremely fierce battle broke out in this world. It was almost as if the entire world was involved. This place should be one of the battlefields. However, it was clear that this sect, whose strength was unknown to the heavens, was defeated in the battle with the foreign tribes. In the end, the entire sect was massacred. Thinking of this, Qin Feng's heart could not help but feel a little heavy. What exactly was the heavenly fissures? Until now, he still did not have a clear understanding of it. Without a doubt, even such a powerful sect was defeated in the end. It was obvious how terrifying it was. Until now, he also understood that the so-called White Treasure Mountain treasure was not the ancient tomb. The ancient tomb should be the entrance, and the ruins of this sect from an unknown era were the true core of the treasure. Thinking of this, Qin Feng's eyes could not help but burn. The ruins of this sect were in another space, and it was extremely desolate. Since it was destroyed, no one had come here. This was a true treasure that no one had explored before. Chapter 586. Spiritual Fire? Kid, be careful here, the demon I suddenly said. Qin Feng nodded. He naturally knew that there must be something special about this sect for it to survive until now. I'm not talking about that. The demon, I shook his head, his tone solemn. There might be evil beings inside. Qin Feng's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He hurriedly asked, "What do you mean?" The demon, I was silent for a long while before faintly saying, "This sect is different from the ones in the divination pavilion. They should have encountered evil spirits." Evil spirits? Qin Feng frowned. What are those? The sky beyond heaven is a very mysterious and terrifying race among the alien races. They call themselves evil spirits. This sect should have been buried by evil spirits, the demon, I faintly said. What's the difference? Qin Feng asked. The demon, I sighed and said, evil spirits are different from other alien races. Normally, after an expert dies in battle, even if their magic power reaches the heavens, they would have completely disappeared after countless years of erosion. However, evil spirits have an ability that no other living beings have. Qin Feng's heart skipped a beat. He subconsciously asked, what ability? Erosion. The demon, I smiled and faintly sighed. The tenacity of evil spirits is far beyond your imagination. As long as you are eroded by them, even if you die, the evil power of erosion will not disappear. They can use another method to reappear in the world as evil spirits. Qin Feng's pupils fiercely shrank when he heard this. He said, everyone in this sect has been eroded by evil spirits? Have they all become evil spirits? Should be. The demon, I nodded and immediately said, however, the laws of this world do not tolerate alien races. Naturally, that includes evil spirits. The laws of heaven and earth will kill evil spirits. Moreover, the existence that sealed this place back then must have been worried that evil spirits would harm the world, so he sealed them here. After thousands of years, these evil spirits should have been killed by the laws of heaven and earth. However, evil spirits cannot be underestimated. This race's vitality is even more tenacious than a centipede. We can't be sure that all evil spirits have been killed. I'm just worried about that. You have to be careful. Qin Feng nodded seriously. Thinking about the erosion, he suddenly asked, Old devil, you also have the ability to erode others. Is it related to the evil spirits? Hee, you guessed my identity so quickly? The demonic, I let out a strange laugh. Qin Feng's heart sank. This demon, I was actually an evil spirit from the outer heaven. Hee, there's no harm in letting you know. Anyway, we're in a coexisting relationship now. You can't leave me, and I can't leave you. What exactly is that race of yours? Why must they invade this world? Qin Feng sighed softly, his tone inexplicable. The demon, I was silent for a while and did not answer. What exactly is there in this world that makes you guys not hesitate to activate the heavenly fissure again and again? There are too many things that a little cultivator like you shouldn't know about. The demonic, I paused for a moment and then said in a low voice, let alone a little cultivator like you. Even I don't know everything. There are some matters that involve even more distant eras. They can't be traced. If there's really a reason, then it's karma. The karma that was once sowed must be repaid with karma in the future. Just wait. The heavenly fissure still exists. There will be a day when the foreign races will invade on a large scale, and at that time, perhaps the true disaster will begin. And I have a feeling that that day won't be too far away. It's not like the heavenly fissure hasn't happened before. Although there were partial defeats, the final victory will still be on our side. This time, it's the same. If our ancestors can do it, We could do it too, Qin Feng said indifferently. He was not bragging, but he had this kind of confidence and determination. He might still be very insignificant now, but he was confident that one day he would stand at the peak of this world and look down on all worlds. At that time, he would know everything that he could not know. This world would still exist for eternity. You're still too inexperienced in the end. Do you think that protecting this world is victory? Ridiculous. Karma is repaid with karma. Before this karma is born, everything is in the endless cycle of reincarnation. Since ancient times, we've all been repaying the karma that was sowed in that era. Before the results, no one can escape. The demonic eye's voice was like a heavy hammer that struck Qin Feng's heart. He said slowly, "The karma of that era? What era was that?" It was chaos, a mysterious and glorious era that could not be recorded in ancient history. Even if I tell you now, you won't understand. If you really have the chance to stand at the peak of this world in the future, you will naturally know all the secrets then, the demonic I said indifferently. Hearing this, Qin Feng's mouth twitched, but he did not ask any more questions. He was indeed not qualified to come into contact with that level of things. It was not realistic to think so much. Tossing aside these emotions, Qin Feng looked at the towering palaces in the distance. He licked his dry lips, and a trace of passion appeared in his eyes. After that, he did not stop and controlled the white jade lotus seat to quickly fly over there. The palaces in the distance did not seem very far, but in fact, because they were too big, it affected the visual effect. Even with the white jade lotus as a means of transportation, he still had not reached there after more than 10 minutes. After flying for a few more minutes, the quiet sky suddenly had a slight whistling sound, and the sound of the wind became clearer as he approached the palaces. Faintly, there was even a hint of coldness. Qin Feng rushed toward the source of the sound. After a few minutes, a huge abyss appeared in front of him. This abyss was extremely huge, and the bottom was incomparably dark. It was unfathomable. Wind blades that could be seen with the naked eye swept up from the bottom, as if they were tearing the air apart, releasing a terrifying power. What is this place? Qin Feng was surprised because in the extremely cold wind blades, there seemed to be an extremely scorching aura. Below, there seems to be the fluctuation of spiritual fire, the demonic, I said in surprise. Qin Feng was stunned, and then his eyes blazed. There was spiritual fire here? I'm not sure, but only spiritual fire has this kind of heat. Qin Feng's heart was burning. He did not care about anything else, and quickly jumped into the abyss. Although the wind blades were powerful, they could pierce through the body of a half-step apex expert, but he was not one of them. Just based on the toughness of his body, Qin Feng dared to challenge a two-heaven realm expert. He slowly descended to the bottom. This place was not as dark as he imagined, but the light was dim. The space at the bottom was very big, but there were very few wind blades. However, the gloomy coldness was extremely dense, as if he was in a world of ice, causing the air to be incomparably moist, as if it would soon freeze. But strangely, under this coldness, there were still traces of scorching aura. There's someone here? Qin Feng's eyes swept around, and then fiercely focused. In a place, he saw traces of calcined rocks. They were all charred, and when he went closer to touch them, there was still a bit of scorching heat. This was left by someone not long ago, and it could not have been left long ago. Qin Feng's face instantly became solemn. He did not expect that someone would be one step ahead of him. At the same time, his heart slightly sank. Ordinary people would not come to this place, unless they discovered that there were treasures here. Then they would choose to torture themselves to come here. Chapter 587. The most difficult thing to heal Qin Feng's expression was a little ugly. The other party's speed was clearly faster than his. Now that there was no trace of that person, he did not know if he had been beaten to it. He quickly began to move. Although the space at the bottom was very large, under his full-speed search, he quickly discovered a huge concealed cave. The cave was pitch black, but there was a faint glow in its depths. It was very mysterious. Qin Feng paused for a moment before he braced himself and walked in. Crackle, crackle. With a thought, the ancient desolate spirit flame left his body, transforming into countless white specks of light. The flames rose and curled around Qin Feng's surroundings. The specks of light had a very good illumination effect. At the same time, following the appearance of the ancient desolate spirit flame, the surrounding chill completely disappeared. Borrowing the weak light, Qin Feng carefully walked towards the interior of the cave. The cave appeared very spacious, with wind blades whistling past from time to time. After walking for a few minutes, the surroundings appeared even more spacious. The light also gradually became brighter, and one could barely see the outline of the cave. Qin Feng withdrew the ancient desolate spirit flame and scanned his surroundings. This place seems to be reaching the depths. He could clearly see a huge and blurry black figure standing in front of him. It seemed to be the depths of the cave, and there was no road ahead. However, just as Qin Feng was puzzled, a weak sound mixed with some pain was transmitted over, causing him to immediately explode. He forcefully suppressed the feeling in his heart, and his gaze moved back and forth in the depths of the cave. Moments later, it stopped on a clean rock. There was a figure lying there. Based on the exquisite figure, it should be a woman. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Qin Feng slowly approached the woman. A wisp of white flame rose from the tip of his finger and slowly floated in front of the woman under his guidance. The clear light allowed him to clearly see the outline of the woman's body. The first thing that entered his eyes was a light purple dress. However, it appeared to be very messy. Occasionally, as the woman wriggled, it would reveal a portion of her long, tender, jade-like legs, which possessed an indescribable allure. However, Qin Feng's gaze didn't linger on those long legs that could make people lose their minds. Instead, it slowly moved up to her flat stomach, her long neck that was as white as a swan's, and finally stopped at that face. There was a thin veil covering her face. However, the veil had already slipped to one side, revealing a peerless beauty that could make any man fall head over heels for her. What a beautiful woman! Just as Qin Feng exclaimed in surprise in his heart, his expression paused for a moment, and then it suddenly became interesting. Was it this girl, Qiu Yin from Taishan Academy? Qin Feng's face became strange. He didn't expect that the person who came in before him was Qiu Yun of Taishan Academy. Looking at her current weak appearance, she should have suffered some serious injuries. At this moment, the dazzling light made Qiu Yun feel something. She opened her beautiful eyes and saw a person standing not far away. Her expression changed slightly. Because of the dazzling light, she couldn't see who it was and whether it was hostile. However, her current situation was very bad. She could only look at the figure for help. Her red lips moved. "Can you help me?" Qin Feng's expression gradually calmed down. His eyes flickered. To be honest, although she was a woman, those who could enter here were all competitors. Moreover, Qiu Yun was a very formidable competitor. No matter who it was, he was afraid that no one would be a good person who would help a competitor. Moreover, she had attacked him. In this place, even if it was someone else, Qin Feng might not necessarily help, let alone someone who had a grudge with Jing Wui. Qin Feng looked at Qiu Yun, who was in a very bad situation. After a moment of silence, he turned and left. "Help me, will you?" However, just as he turned, Qiu Yun's weak and pleading voice came from behind again. Qin Feng paused slightly, his expression uncertain. To save or not to save? Qin Feng felt a little troubled in his heart. If he were to save her, he would be extremely unwilling in his heart. But when he heard her pleading voice, he was unable to harden his heart and leave. He knew that if no one helped, Qiu Yun would most likely stay here. Since she and Jing Wui had a hostile relationship, it was impossible for him to be on good terms with her. To be honest, it was already very good that he didn't hit her when she was down. "This damned woman, if you don't have the strength, why did you come here? Looking for death?" Qin Feng cursed angrily in his heart. After all, he couldn't be indifferent and leave her in the lurch. Moreover, he might be able to find out about Jing Wui through her. Qin Feng turned and walked towards Qiu Yun. What's going on? Qin Feng came to Qiu Yun's side and squatted down. At a close distance, he discovered that Qiu Yun's body was burning with a thin layer of flame. This wasn't the pink flame that she used before. It was similar to pink with a tinge of brown. The flames burned on her body, causing a large portion of her exposed skin to be suffused with a reddish hue, appearing somewhat alluring. How can I help you? Qin Feng asked. Qiu Yun's face was flushed red. Her smooth forehead was covered with beads of sweat. Her starry eyes were blurred as she looked at Qin Feng in front of her. It took her a while to react. It's you? Qiu Yun's pretty face was also a little strange. Obviously, she didn't expect Qin Feng to appear here. However, this strangeness was quickly replaced by pain. Her beautiful eyes were tightly shut, and the blush on her fair face was even more intense. Her body couldn't help but squirm, revealing a large patch of white skin. Looking at Qiu Yun's appearance, Qin Feng couldn't help but feel an evil fire rising in his lower abdomen. Damn, this scene was too torturous. He was a man, and a normal man at that. How could he resist such temptation? If you want me to help you, at least tell me what's going on. Qin Feng forcefully suppressed the evil fire in his heart and asked with a frown. However, Qiu Yun did not reply to his question. Her red lips were slightly parted as she exhaled a fragrant breath. Her delicate body grew increasingly hot. Looking at this scene, Qin Feng's mouth twitched. This woman's consciousness was probably blurred. However, if she didn't say anything, how could he save her? Old man, what should I do? Qin Feng asked in his heart. There are two ways. One is simple, the other is complicated. The demon, I said slowly. However, Qin Feng felt that the tone was a little strange. She has 3 types of flames in her body. She should have suppressed them well before. However, she must have experienced something here that caused 2 of the flames that weren't completely merged to riot and devour each other. This is because the fire in her heart has caused some changes in her body. The simplest way is to directly extinguish the fire. How to extinguish it? Qin Feng gritted his teeth and asked. He seemed to have guessed something. How to extinguish it? The demon, I suddenly laughed. There was a treachery hidden in the laughter that made Qin Feng speechless. How do you usually extinguish the fire? It's the same for men and women. However, one will transform into yang fire, while the other will transform into yin fire. The fire in her body has already transformed into pure yin fire. If it's not extinguished, her body will be completely incinerated. The best way is to *CK her. Hearing the demon eye's understatement, Qin Feng suddenly felt a headache coming on. Wasn't *King her courting death? Although he was doing whatever he wanted to her now, and doing those dirty things in order to save her, Qin Feng knew that such a woman with an ice-cold temperament was very arrogant in her bones. Ordinary men would not be able to enter her eyes at all. If he were to do her, he was afraid that after he was done, he would be hunted down endlessly by her. What about the more complicated method? Qin Feng said helplessly. He wouldn't dare to use such a simple method no matter what. Kid, such a peerless beauty is rare. Are you sure you can't *CK her? The demon I laughed extremely treacherously. If she *King me, I won't object. Looking at the beauty in front of him, Qin Feng licked his lips and asked irritably, Hurry up and tell me the second method. I don't think she can hold on for much longer. The demon I laughed and didn't say much. He said, the second method is more dangerous. It will test your ability to control fire. The 2 types of fire in her body are far inferior to the ancient desolate spiritual flame. Use it to suppress the 2 flames and give her time to recover. Once she recovers, she will naturally have a way to deal with the current situation. However, this method is very dangerous. If you make a mistake and cause the ancient desolate spiritual flame to run amok in her body, there's no need to save her. She will be burned to ashes directly. The demon I said seriously. She's not you. She won't be able to withstand the power of the ancient desolate spiritual flame. I personally prefer the first method. It's simple and clear. Qin Feng grinned. He also wanted the first method. It was simple and convenient, but would it work? Even if this Qiu Yun were to die, she would not allow anyone to taint her pure body. I'll choose the second method. Qin Feng's heart was filled with regret as he sighed. He was just about to activate the ancient desolate spirit flame. However, before he had the time to move, two lotus root-like delicate arms suddenly wrapped around his neck. A seemingly soft and boneless lovely body also stuck to Qin Feng's chest like a water snake. A delicate fragrance surged into his nose. Fuck! With a fragrant softness in his arms, Qin Feng immediately got up. Blood rushed to his brain. However, he had experienced a similar situation with Gong Xiaoxi and Su Xiaochun. Hence, he quickly restrained himself. That's right. The fire in her body is somewhat connected to your ancient desolate spiritual flame. If you do it with her, it will be of great help to the accumulation of yin-yang energy in your body. TSK, the power of yin and yang is really mysterious. If you use the normal yin and yang method to mix, not only will you be able to resolve her crisis, both of you will also benefit greatly. The demon eye was still encouraging Qin Feng to use the first method. Qin Feng ignored it and pushed away the softness in his arms. However, his rejection provoked an instinctive resistance from the softness in his arms. She burrowed into his arms. Qin Feng firmly suppressed Qin Feng. He suddenly quivered. In his daze, he was already pressed down by Qiu Yun. The latter tightly wrapped around him like an octopus, making it impossible for him to move. This kind of beauty was self-evident. However, Qin Feng knew that if things continued to develop like this, he would enjoy a moment of pleasure. However, there would be countless troubles in the future. He reached out for the lotus root-like wrist that was tightly wrapped around his neck. Forcing himself to calm down, Qin Feng tried his best to block the perception of his body, allowing Qiu Yun to abuse his body. Qin Feng held his breath and concentrated. He drew out the ancient desolate spiritual flame in his body and wrapped it with spirit energy. Then, he followed Qiu Yun's wrist and drilled into her body. As for himself, he couldn't resist. So be it. Qin Feng thought so. However, whether he could break free from Qiu Yun and treat her, only he knew. In any case, he was forced to treat her. As long as she didn't lose her virginity, it would be fine. As for the rest, in Qin Feng's opinion, he would just let her do it this time. Spiritual energy wrapped around the ancient desolate spiritual flame as it slowly flowed within Qiu Yun's body. When the fiery energy that filled her meridians came into contact with the ancient desolate spiritual flame, it quickly avoided it, not daring to come into contact with Ing Feng. Inside the cave, the scenery of spring was boundless. The overflowing feeling of spring made people unable to help but blush, and their hearts beat faster. In the eyes of others, this was a kind of enjoyment. However, to Qin Feng, this was a torture worse than death. His loved ones were about to explode. But even so, he still had to hold his breath and concentrate on controlling the ancient desolate spiritual flame that was entering Qiu Yun's body. Because just as the devil I had said, Qiu Yun was different from him. The ancient desolate spiritual flame would only make him feel restricted. Chapter 588. To retire with success, however, Qin Feng's control over the ancient desolate spiritual flames had clearly reached a very precise level. The flames smoothly passed through her meridians and poured into Qiu Yun's aura sea. Upon entering her aura sea, Qin Feng could feel the boundless heat waves. Her aura sea was filled with scorching heat. Two different colored flames, one pink and the other dark brown, were engaged in an intense confrontation. However, the pink flame should have the upper hand, as more than half of the space was filled with the pink flame. However, it was only the pink flame that had the upper hand. It was rather difficult for the pink flame to suppress the dark brown flame. At this moment, Qin Feng finally understood why Qiu Yun was in such a state. It turned out that the two flames were clashing and no one could do anything to the other. When the ancient desolate spiritual flames entered, It immediately caused the two flames to fiercely resist. However, Qin Feng did not panic in the slightest. The spiritual energy that enveloped the ancient desolate spiritual flames gradually expanded, forming a protective barrier that contained the ancient desolate spiritual flames within. Thereafter, he allowed the other two flames to invade and entangle with it. It had to be said that a spiritual flame, like the ancient desolate spiritual flames, was indeed domineering. In terms of the degree of scorching heat, the ancient desolate spiritual flames was perhaps barely comparable to the dark brown flame. It was much weaker compared to the pink flame. However, in the face of the powerful suppression of the two flames, it was clearly more powerful. It directly opened its mouth and enveloped the two flames. Fighting one against two, it was directly suppressed. The ancient desolate spiritual flames turned into a white fireball and enveloped the two flames. The two flames violently struggled. One could see that the pink and brown flames occupied 2/3 of the white fireball. However, even so, they were unable to break free from the suppression of the ancient desolate spiritual flames. On the contrary, as time passed, the resistance of the two flames gradually weakened. The two colors that occupied most of the fireball were gradually separated. 2/3, 1/2, 1/3, 1/4. Not long after, the pink and dark brown flames were suppressed to the point where they were unable to resist. They could only turn into two different colored energy balls and tightly stick together. As the two colored flames were suppressed, the scorching heat in his aura C calmed down. The fiery energy in his meridians also returned to his aura C and was absorbed into the energy ball. The crimson color on Qiuyun's body also slowly faded away. At a certain moment, the spiritual energy that had been burned like flames recovered, and Qiuyun's rationality also returned to her mind. In an instant, the enchanting charm on her pretty face disappeared. Her pair of beautiful eyes slowly opened, and the blurriness in her eyes gradually returned to clarity. Thus, her pair of beautiful eyes slowly widened. For pairs of eyes met. In an instant, it was as if lightning flashed. However, the four pairs of lips were still tightly pressed together. Qiuyun's mind was in a mess. After a brief moment of blankness, she collected her thoughts. Her eyes were filled with icy, murderous intent. Qin Feng could feel the rapidly surging spiritual energy in her body. Even her aura C was violently fluctuating, as if it was about to shatter the white energy ball formed by the ancient spiritual desolate flames. If you don't want to die, then calm down. Qin Feng took the initiative to leave the softness and said in an icy voice. At the same time, the ancient spiritual desolate flames also rapidly expanded, threatening her. Qiuyun was stunned. She could also feel an extremely scorching aura in her body. However, that scorching aura had to be suppressed. Otherwise, if it was released, she had no doubt that she would be burned from the inside out. You shameless! Qiuyun did not dare to move. Her ice-cold face was flushed red, and her eyes were filled with anger and shame. There are only two ways to save you. Either I have sex with you, or I suppress the two balls of flames in your body. You can check the condition of your body. Qin Feng did not waste any time with her, and directly went to the point. Hearing this, Qiuyun's mind immediately sank into her body. Immediately, she saw that the two types of flames that made her wish she was dead were suppressed in a white energy ball. She raised her head, and there was unconcealable shock in her eyes. You actually suppressed the two flames in my body? She knew that the three types of flames in her body were difficult to produce. Only one of them had completely fused with her body, and the other two had yet to completely fuse. The collision between the medicinal flame and the beast flame had brought her great pain, because they were two completely different types of flames. She did not expect that it would be so easily suppressed by Qin Feng. However, when she thought of his godly mastery of fire control, she understood in her heart. If not, Qin Feng glanced at her red and swollen, alluring red lips and curled his lips. However, He pretended to have an unhappy expression and said, "You should know your own situation. You were the one who pounced on me, and I had no way to resist. Moreover, I am currently treating you and need to expend a large portion of my attention. If you move recklessly, your little life would have already been lost." Xiao Yun's charming face instantly turned red. She did not doubt Qin Feng's words. Looking at this posture, she was indeed the one who initiated it. Furthermore, he was indeed concentrating on treating her and did not move recklessly. This kind of shameful feeling made Xiao Yun's face so red that it could drip blood. However, under Qin Feng's low shout, she did not dare to move recklessly. This was because Qin Feng was holding her wrist, controlling the scorching flames in her body. If she lost control, what kind of situation would it cause? Just thinking about it made her heart tremble. The flames in your body have already been controlled by me. Now, can you suppress these two types of flames? Qin Feng asked. Xiao Yun's face was red as she nodded. Good. Now, let's prepare for the exchange. You will control the flames in your body, and I will draw out my strength. Hearing this, Xiao Yun's face became serious. Under her control, the rich spiritual energy in her body flowed into her qi si. The third scarlet flame swept out, and then slowly approached the white energy ball. Let's begin. Qin Feng's face was solemn as he controlled the ancient desolate spiritual flame to quickly retreat. The two types of flames that had lost the suppression of the ancient desolate spiritual flame were about to counterattack, but they were surrounded by a rich spiritual energy and scarlet flame. Seeing the two types of flames being suppressed, Qin Feng secretly let out a sigh of relief. His spiritual energy wrapped around the ancient desolate spiritual flame and quickly pulled it out of Xiao Yun's body. Just as his spiritual energy was pulled out, Qin Feng immediately let go of Xiao Yun's wrist and retreated. His body slipped, and he left her suppression. The latter did not have time to be shy. She casually tidied up her clothes, sat down, and began to suppress the two types of flames, causing them to quickly fuse. However, as the flames around her disappeared, the chill in the cave attacked again. Ignore it, Qin Feng lightly shouted. With a flick of his finger, the ancient desolate spiritual flame shot out and turned into a white light curtain around the two of them. The white flame burned on the light curtain, and the chill in the wind blade was blocked outside. At this point, Qin Feng had roughly guessed that two of the three types of flames in Xiao Yun's body should not have been completely fused by her. After entering here, she had been using the flames to resist the chill. Perhaps it was because she had used too much that it caused the two types of flames to go berserk. This light curtain can restrain the chill in here. You should first fuse the two types of flames here. Chapter 589. Netherworld bead. Only after Qin Feng left did the redness on Xiao Yun's face gradually fade. She opened her eyes and looked in the direction that Qin Feng had left with a complicated look in her eyes. Thank you. After a long while, an indescribable voice slowly sounded out and gently floated within the white light screen. After looking around for a while, he did not find anything special, nor was there any fluctuation of spiritual fire. This made Qin Feng astonished. Even Xiao Yun had risked her life to come here. So how could there be nothing here? Could it be that this woman beat me to it? Qin Feng glanced at Xiao Yun, who was sitting cross-legged with her eyes closed. A moment later, he shook his head. When he was treating her, he could sense that there was not the slightest fluctuation of spiritual fire on her body. However, they were already in the depths of the cave, and there was no path ahead. If the spiritual fire was not here, then where was it? There's something wrong with the wall in front. Just as he was puzzled, the demonic eye's voice suddenly rang out. Qin Feng was taken aback. He quickly walked towards the wall and gently touched it with his hand. Immediately, a bone-chilling chill passed through his fingertips and reached the bottom of his heart. There's indeed a problem. Qin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. After that, he started to feel around on the wall. A few minutes later, his hands touched nothing, causing him to be stunned. The wall before his eyes was still there, but at the place where his hands touched, there was no feeling at all. A fake wall. Qin Feng understood. No wonder there were wind blades coming from the wall. It turned out that someone had used some method to confuse his vision. He softly chuckled as he directly passed through the fake wall. What entered his eyes was a huge palace. This palace was too huge, and its entire body was gray. It made people feel an indescribable pressure. That is, Qin Feng was stunned for a moment. He noticed that there was a stone platform in front of him. On the stone platform, there was a speck of light. It looked like a flame, but also like a pill. Its shape seemed to be constantly changing. Qin Feng walked closer and felt an extremely hot temperature from the speck of light. This temperature far exceeded the temperature of the two flames in Xiao Yun's body. It was quite terrifying. "This is Fire Heart," Demon Eye said. "Fire Heart." Qin Feng was surprised and asked, "What is a fire heart?" The origin of fire is just like the fire spirit of spiritual fire. However, the fire spirit is of a much higher level than the fire heart. The demonic Eye said, "It's impossible for ordinary flames to have a fire heart. Only extremely powerful and innately powerful flames can condense a fire heart. Or when flames fuse and devour each other, there's a chance that a fire heart will be born. Normally, a flame that can condense a fire core has a higher level than other flames. This is because it already has the consciousness to devour other flames. It can level up. In that case, it can also evolve into a spiritual fire. Qin Feng's heart moved slightly. In that case, wouldn't the spiritual fire be able to be mass-produced? Impossible. Spiritual flames are born from the heavens and the earth, born from the will of the heavens and the earth. No matter how powerful other flames are, they will never be able to advance to spiritual flames. They can only be infinitely close to it. Among them, an extremely rare few might be blessed by the heavens and evolve into pseudo-spiritual flames. This is also the limit. No wonder that little girl took the risk to come here. It seems that she sensed it in advance. The demonic Eye paused and looked at Qin Feng, who was drooling. He said, "The fire heart is extremely useful to her, but it won't be of any benefit to you. Your Taoist flame is the ancient, desolate spiritual flame, which is a spiritual fire." Qin Feng nodded. There wasn't the slightest regret on his face, but the drooling in his eyes didn't disappear. He directly used the ancient, desolate spiritual flame and wrapped it into his body. "As I said, the fire heart won't be of any help to you." The demonic Eye said. Qin Feng grinned and said with a smile, "I know it's useless, but isn't it very useful to some people? The value of the fire heart varies from person to person. I think it could be sold for a good price." The demonic Eye. After putting away the fire heart, Qin Feng also began to look at the huge palace. The palace was grayish-black, and the air was filled with a sense of vicissitudes. There were many stone pillars supporting the palace, and there was nothing special about it except that it looked quite ancient. However, after entering this place, he felt uncomfortable, and he didn't know the source of this feeling. It was as if this palace was somewhat incompatible with the real world. After looking around for a while, Qin Feng frowned and said, "There doesn't seem to be anything else here. Old devil, did you find anything?" Qin Feng asked. At that time, this guy said there were traces of the spiritual fire. After a moment of silence, the demonic Eye said, "Look at that fire pillar." Qin Feng glanced at it and was speechless. That fire has already. Before he finished speaking, he suddenly stopped. Qin Feng's eyes widened. "There's a spiritual fire there. Let's go and see." Qin Feng nodded and quickly flew to the fire pillar. At the top, there was a fire shelf, but there was only a thumb-sized black bead. This startled him. "Old devil, what's the situation?" "The netherworld bead, as expected." The demonic Eye didn't answer directly, but sighed softly. "We came here for nothing." Hearing the sigh, Qin Feng felt a chill in his heart. Not completely. The demonic Eye shook his head and said, "The netherworld earth fire should have existed here before. It is very likely that the strongest of this sect had once subdued it. Following the destruction of this place, the netherworld earth fire also left. However, this spiritual fire is somewhat different from other spiritual fires. It comes from under the earth and is formed by gathering the power of the earth. Therefore, the fire spirit that is born is extremely close to the earth. It can borrow the power of the earth to give birth to fire spirit essence. After thousands of years of nurturing by the power of the earth, it condenses into a bead called the netherworld bead. The netherworld bead in your hand is formed by the power of the earth and the fire spirit of the netherworld earth fire. In the future, you can rely on the netherworld bead and the netherworld earth fire to sense each other. Perhaps you can find traces of the netherworld earth fire. Hearing this, Qin Feng sighed softly. It was impossible to say that he wasn't disappointed. Fortunately, he didn't have too much hope before. Now that he could find traces of the netherworld earth fire, it was a good harvest. Collecting his thoughts, Qin Feng put away the netherworld bead. Just as he put it down, a sound came from outside, and Qiuyan walked in. After seeing Qin Feng, Qiuyan's beautiful face flushed unnaturally and seductively. However, it was covered by a veil, and no one could see it. Your problem is solved? Qin Feng also saw Qiuyan walk in, and his slightly depressed face instantly recovered its indifference. Seeing Qin Feng walk over, Qiuyan unnaturally took a step back. Seeing this, Qin Feng didn't approach and stopped not far away. Thank you for what you did just now. Qiuyan's clear and cold voice trembled in an unusual manner. Her delicate body was a little stiff, and her ears behind the veil were a little red. It's just a small matter. Qin Feng smiled awkwardly. Thinking about it, his face was also a little unnatural. After all, it was impossible for an innocent little virgin like him to face the absurd thing that happened just now. Chapter 590. To confront each other. What is the relationship between you and Jing Wui? In the end, Qin Feng broke the silence and asked with a serious expression. He's a scoundrel. Speaking of this person, Qiuyan also regained her calm. Looking at Qin Feng, her eyes flashed with killing intent. Since you are acquainted with him, you should know what kind of person he is, right? Seeing a trace of anger in Qiuyan's eyes, Qin Feng understood that Jing Wui must have seen the beauty of life and had a cheap mouth. He is like this, lecherous but not daring. Qin Feng said. He took liberties with me and the princess of the Heavenly Dragon Empire, Tan Tan. He even tricked the three of us and snatched the things that we worked so hard to obtain. You say he doesn't have the guts? Qiuyan looked at Qin Feng and said coldly. Qin Feng was stunned. This Jing Wui was really not easy to deal with. He even dared to take liberties with a student of the Imperial Mystery Academy and the princess of the Heavenly Dragon Empire. After entering this world, Qin Feng naturally crammed all kinds of information about this world, especially the Great Northwest. The vast territory was boundless, and there were countless empires. The Great Yin Empire was only a small empire among the many empires, while the Heavenly Dragon Empire was a large empire. Moreover, it was one of the top 10 large empires. In terms of national strength, the two could not be compared at all. Qin Feng did not expect that Tan Tan's status was not low. However, Jing Wui was still in the same group as him. So he said, taking liberties with others is indeed wrong, but I don't agree with you saying that he snatched your things. Since everyone is fighting for it, what's wrong with him obtaining it with his own strength? That is because you don't know what despicable methods he used to deceive us, pretending to be in the same group as us. If we did not block so many dangers in front of him, how could he have succeeded? Qiuyan said coldly. The process is nothing more than a means to achieve one's goal. There's nothing wrong with that. You're all working for him, but that's also a problem of your ability. He's just using all available conditions to achieve his goal. In the fight for opportunities, whoever has the ability will have the last laugh. Don't tell me you don't understand this simple logic. He didn't do anything wrong in this matter. It's just that you refuse to accept the shame of failure, Qin Feng said. Qiuyan frowned and snorted. You're on his side. Naturally, you'll speak for him. Qin Feng shook his head and was too lazy to argue with her. He asked, where is he? Also, with his strength, how could he have tricked you? When he first entered this world, Jing Wui's strength was similar to his. Even now, without the big explosion, Qin Feng didn't think that he could trick these three people. He ran away a long time ago. Qiu Yun pursed her lips and glanced at Qin Feng. He's much more powerful than you think. If there's no accident, he should have broken through to the two-heaven stage with the help of that thing. Hearing this, Qin Feng's heart trembled. Two-heaven stage. What exactly did Jing Wui experience to increase his strength so quickly? During this period of time, he felt that his growth was fast enough. He had a lot of treasures, defensive treasures, offensive treasures, flying heaven tools, and the opportunities of the pavilion of heavenly secrets. It was impossible to put them in the primitive land, but even so, he was only at the peak of half a step. On the other hand, Jing Wui had most likely reached the two-heaven stage. The gap between them was simply too big. However, Qin Feng could also imagine that Jing Wui must have had a lot of opportunities. To be able to reach this step, he must have paid a lot. Jing Wui was already so strong, so Qin Feng didn't worry about his safety. However, it also aroused his competitive spirit. In the beginning, their strength was almost the same, but now the gap was too big. Restraining his emotions, Qin Feng looked at Qiu Yun. Since he couldn't get any news about Jing Wui, he was too lazy to ask anymore and was about to leave. Wait a minute. Qiu Yun stood in front of Qin Feng. First, she looked around, then turned her gaze back to Qin Feng. She said in an uncertain tone, "Before, I felt an extremely hot aura here. It should be a kind of flame of high quality. I don't know if you saw it." Her tone sounded like a question, but if one listened carefully, one could hear a trace of strangeness. How is this uncertain? She was clearly asking him where he kept the flame. Of course, Qin Feng understood Qiu Yun's meaning. He didn't intend to hide it. He opened his palm, and a flame flashed. He looked at Qiu Yun, whose beautiful eyes were filled with unconcealable joy, and said with a smile, "Are you talking about this fire heart?" "What? You said this is the fire heart?" Qiu Yun's beautiful eyes suddenly widened, and an unconcealable shock appeared in those beautiful eyes. "You should be looking for this, right?" Qin Feng nodded and asked with a smile. Staring blankly at the flame floating in Qin Feng's palm, Qiu Yun came back to her senses after a long while. She looked at Qin Feng, and her eyes became slightly complicated. The fire heart was something that only people who understood fire very well would know. Ordinary people didn't know what the fire heart was, but from his words, it seemed to be very common. Yes, he also had an extremely mysterious flame, so it was normal for him to know something about the fire heart. Thinking of this, Qiu Yun felt relieved. Looking at the fire heart in front of her, the depths of her eyes surged with passion and excitement. She originally thought that it was just a flame of a higher quality, but she never expected it to be the fire heart. For someone who is good at using fire, the temptation of the fire heart was probably no less than Qin Feng's desire to improve his physical body in order to use the forbidden technique. "Thank you very much." Qiu Yun sincerely thanked him, and then one of her jade-like hands slowly reached out to the fire heart floating in Qin Feng's palm. However, Qin Feng took a step back, causing him to pounce on empty air. Qiu Yun was stunned, and looked at Qin Feng in confusion. "Miss Qiu, you don't have the right to take this." Qin Feng clenched his hand, put away the fire heart, and said with a smile. Qiu Yun was stunned, and when Qin Feng's voice sounded, she frowned again and said seriously, "I found it first, so it should belong to me. Of course, out of gratitude, I will also give you some compensation." Qin Feng shook his head slightly, took another step back, and looked at her with a smile. "What do you mean? Do you want to take it for yourself?" Seeing Qin Feng's actions, Qiu Yun's face gradually darkened, and her voice was cold. "Take it for myself?" Qin Feng shook his head with a smile and said, "The fire heart is an ownerless object, and it belongs to whoever has it. It has never been in your hands, so I took it. How can I take it for myself? But I found it first, so I should have a share," Qiu Yun said with conviction, not feeling that she was being unreasonable. "First of all, let me tell you that these ownerless treasures don't belong to whoever finds them. Only the capable can get them. Don't tell me you don't understand such a simple logic. Glancing at Xiao Yun, Qin Feng continued. Moreover, I didn't come here to follow your footsteps, so there's no such thing as a partnership. Therefore, the things here belong to whoever finds them. Do you think that someone will give you a share of the things that they worked so hard to find just because you know of its existence? If you think so, then I seem to have saved you just now. If I didn't save you just now, you would be a charred corpse now, and you wouldn't have the chance to touch anything here. Chapter 591. A failed extortion. Xiao Yun's voice faltered. Although she was furious, she could not find any words to refute him. Thinking about it carefully, she did not have the right to make Qin Feng hand over Hua Xian. Moreover, she had only managed to survive because of his help earlier. At the end of the day, she owed him a favor. However, Hua Xian was just too important to her. It had not been easy for her to get here, and she had almost met with an accident along the way. As such, she was unwilling to return empty-handed. I'm indeed very touched by your help. Today, I owe you a favor. If you need it in the future, I will definitely help you. Xiao Yun raised her bright eyes and looked at Qin Feng. She said softly, but Hua Xian is very important to me. You did not hesitate to take the risk to get here, so I hope you can give it to me. Consider it my second favor to you. Hearing this, Qin Feng shook his head and smiled. He said, You haven't even returned the first favor, and you're already in a hurry to owe me a second one? I don't need these illusory things. If you want to talk to me about Hua Xian, then please return the first favor first. After all, I did save you. I suffered quite a bit. You suffered? Xiao Yun could not help but laugh. He was clearly the one who took advantage of her, and now he was saying that she suffered. However, she, who had always been cold, could not bring herself to say such absurd things. She could only glare at Qin Feng with her beautiful eyes. I don't have any improper thoughts about you, but I almost lost my virginity in order to save you. Who are you saying suffered? In this world, not all men would submit to your beauty. So, don't think that just because I've taken advantage of you, I should be complacent and feel that I've let you down. Qin Feng said in a deadly earnest manner, angering Xiao Yun so much that her teeth were chattering. She clenched her fists tightly. If not for the fact that she owed him a favor, she really wanted to slap his serious face. Usually, the people she met were all rather forthright. As long as she said a word, those people would throw their heads down, shed their blood, and do their best to please her. It was the first time she met someone like Qin Feng who was so stubborn. Taking in a deep breath of cold air, Xiao Yun tried her best to calm her emotions. A cold glint gradually surged in her bright eyes. I will repay you for saving my life in the future. As for the fire heart, as you said earlier, this kind of thing belongs to the most capable. Isn't that right? What do you want? Qin Feng stared at Xiao Yun and asked with a chuckle. I don't want to think about it. I just want to do as you said and let the capable ones get it. Xiao Yun said indifferently. You want to fight with me, and the stronger one will get the fire heart? Is that wrong? Didn't you say that only the capable can obtain it? It's not yours, so why can't I snatch it? Xiao Yun retorted. If you think you are better than me, then I don't want Hua Xian. Xiao Yun tilted her head and looked at Qin Feng. After a while, she said, But you should not be my opponent now. The smile on Qin Feng's face slowly disappeared. He sneered. Why? Do you want to fight with your benefactor? Don't tie me down with this moral framework. I said that I will repay you for saving me in the future. I will not be too harsh on you. I only hope that when we fight later, when you are in despair, you will know what is good for you. Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you saved me. I am determined to obtain the fire heart. Xiao Yun frowned and said. Her tone was very firm. Must get. Qin Feng heard this and sneered. Are you so sure that you can defeat me and make me despair? Could it be that I'm not a match for you? Xiao Yun did not mind and asked in return. You are very strong. I am not your opponent. Qin Feng shook his head and was not arrogant. He stared straight at Xiao Yun. After pausing for a moment, he suddenly said in a soft voice, However, if I want to leave this place, I'm afraid you won't be able to stop me. Xiao Yun's eyes narrowed. A pair of beautiful eyes rolled around Qin Feng's body. She wanted to see the truth of Qin Feng's words, but that face of his was as calm as an ancient well. She couldn't see anything. What will it take for you to give me what Exine? Xiao Yun helplessly asked. She dispelled the thought of forcefully seizing Qin Feng because she truly couldn't see through him. Naturally, with regards to her own strength, she was very confident. However, no matter what, Qin Feng had saved her before. If she could avoid making a move, she would try her best not to. Qin Feng pondered for a moment, and his face showed some hesitation. It is not impossible to give it to you, but what will you give in exchange? What do you want? Xiao Yun asked. Qin Feng thought for a moment and said with a smile, heaven-level battle skills, high-level spells, special treasures of heaven and earth, or something that can help with spiritual cultivation. Xiao Yun frowned, and with a flip of her hand, a scroll appeared in her hand. She said, this is a heaven-level battle skill. As expected of someone from Taishin Academy, Qin Feng was secretly shocked. Casually taking out a heaven-ranked battle skill was something many major powers wouldn't be able to do. He shook his head and said, maybe I didn't express it clearly. What I meant is that you have to take out something that can satisfy me in exchange. A heaven-ranked battle skill is merely one of the many things. Greedy. Xiao Yun's beautiful eyes flashed with resentment, but she did not say much. She took out a jade bottle and said, there are 3 drops of 9 heavens spiritual liquid in here. Qin Feng raised his eyebrows, not the slightest bit moved. He could give Dance 4 drops in one go, and he still had dozens of drops on him. Why would he care about 3 drops? Xiao Yun frowned. What else do you want? I will take this heaven-level battle skill. As for the 9 heavens spiritual liquid, I am afraid that I have no less than you, so I don't need it. After a pause, Qin Feng continued, but if you can provide something that can enhance spiritual power, maybe I will be a little tempted. Something that can enhance spiritual power? Xiao Yun shook her head and said, don't count on it. This kind of thing is rare on this continent. Even if Taishin Academy has it, I can't get it. Looking at Xiao Yun, Qin Feng's smile did not change, and he asked the demon eye in his heart if her words were true. It should be true. Things that can enhance spiritual power are indeed hard to find. Every one of them is a treasure. With her status as a student, it should be impossible for her to have such things, the demon eye said. Hearing this, Qin Feng sighed in his heart. Was there really no way to make up for the shortcoming of his spiritual power? As his strength increased, his spiritual power became more and more useless. But he was also helpless in this regard. It was too difficult to improve his spiritual power quickly. What else can I ask for? Qin Feng pondered. He did not lack money or herbs. The collection of Mount Blackwater and the rewards from Huangfu Huan and the Song clan were too much for him to use up. Old Mo, what else do I need? Qin Feng asked in his heart. Chapter 592. An unforeseen event. Apart from mental energy materials, you don't seem to have any other necessities. After a pause, the demonic eye said, just follow your heart. Let yourself obtain the greatest benefits. Even if you don't need them now, you might need them in the future. So, the more the better. The more the better? Qin Feng nodded inwardly. Soon after, a brilliant smile appeared on his face as he sincerely said, actually, I'm not that unkind. If you have any other heavenly treasures, take them all out for me to see. I'll just pick a few that I'm satisfied with. Xiao Yun looked at him strangely. You're not mean? You're as shameless as that scoundrel with the surname Jing. Didn't you say you didn't care for the 9 heavens spiritual liquid? You didn't hesitate at all when you took these 3 drops. Xiao Yun couldn't be bothered to bicker with him, nor did she want to waste any more words with him. She took out many treasures from her storage ring. Qin Feng's eyes lit up, as expected of someone from a great academy. Even a student's collection was almost as good as his. He focused on a few high-quality medicinal ingredients and pills that he didn't have. At the same time, he also paid attention to Xiao Yun's expression. When a hint of anger appeared on her face, Qin Feng decisively stopped. I'll give you the money and the goods. I won't lie to you. After collecting everything, Qin Feng took out the fire core and handed it to Qiu Yun. Feeling the scorching heat from the fire core, the latter's beautiful eyes surged with unconcealable excitement. Thank you. Qiu Yun received the fire core. Then, under Qin Feng's depressed gaze, she impatiently sucked it into her body and fused it with the flames in her body. Qin Feng was secretly delighted. Exchanging something that he didn't need for so much, this trip was too worth it. Once the fire core entered her body, Qiu Yun's body suddenly shook. A formless wind spread from her body as the flames wantonly. Can you protect me? Qin Feng narrowed his eyes with a smile on his face. He didn't say anything. Qiu Yun glanced at him tiredly and took out a 6th-grade medicinal pill. Don't worry. During this time, no one will disturb you. No wonder Qin Feng was so calculative toward a girl. In his opinion, because of Jing Wui, he couldn't get along well with these students. Since that was the case, why not strive for greater benefits for himself? He wasn't the kind of idiot who would be bewitched by a beauty smile. He wasn't the kind of idiot who couldn't tell north from south and only thought with his lower body. He still had to fight for himself. After receiving the other party's affirmation, Qiu Yun sat down cross-legged, stabilized her mind, and began to refine the fire core. Wisps of deep purple flame surrounded her. Looking at the deep purple flames that shrouded Qiu Yun's body, a tinge of astonishment flitted across Qin Feng's eyes. It seems that merging the 3 types of flames from the fire core was extremely beneficial to Qiu Yun. The power of these flames was clearly stronger than the pink flames from before. However, Qin Feng was only astonished. Whether it was the pink flames from before or the deep purple flames now, there were nothing in front of the ancient desolate spirit flame. If she merges with the fire core, your ancient desolate spirit flame will no longer be able to suppress her. The demonic eye's voice suddenly sounded out. Qin Feng was slightly taken aback. Soon after, he gave an indifferent smile. The ancient desolate spirit flame was indeed extremely effective against fire attribute cultivators. However, he didn't pay too much attention to it. The suppression brought about by a high-grade flame was merely an external object and far less important than one's own strength. Even without the suppression of the ancient desolate spirit flame on Qiu Yun, it wouldn't be so easy for Qiu Yun to devour him. Approximately half an hour later, the raging flames around Qiu Yun's body gradually died down. When the last wisp of flame entered her body, the latter's body was still for a moment before it suddenly shook. A fiery heat wave violently spread out in all directions with her at the center. Qin Feng's face did not have any change as he sensed the searing heat of the air wave. A white-colored light curtain appeared out of nowhere and blocked in front of him. When the incoming heat wave came into contact with a white-colored light curtain, it was split into 2 like a knife cutting through tofu. It was unable to harm him at all. Qiu Yun slowly opened her beautiful eyes. Within her eyes, a wisp of faint purple flame flickered. A moment later, it disappeared. She slowly stood up, a strange expression on her face as she stared at Qin Feng. It seemed to be unfriendly, provocative, and interested. You want to fight with me? Qin Feng smiled as the black and white spiritual energy slowly flowed within his body. A wisp of flame rose. Qiu Yun combed her long black hair as a purple flame danced between her slender and fair fingers. She smiled and said, I'm not going to fight with you. I'm just interested in your white flames. As her laughter faded, she flicked her finger. A wisp of flame shot towards Qin Feng. Seeing this, Qin Feng faintly shook his head. When the purple flame was less than a meter away from him, he stretched out his hand and directly caught it in his palm. Wisps of white spiritual energy wrapped around it as he slowly clenched his fist. The demonic eye was right. The purple flame had fused with the fire heart, and its power had greatly increased. If it was before, the ancient desolate spirit flame could suppress and shatter it in an instant. But now, it took 3 times the time to shatter it into nothingness. Of course, this was only a competition of flames, and it had nothing to do with spiritual energy. Otherwise, Qin Feng would not be in his strongest state. He would be instantly turned into ashes. However, for Qiu Yun, this was enough to make her expression solemn. She became more and more curious about Qin Feng's flames. After all, a flame with the fire heart was no longer an ordinary flame. But even so, in front of Qin Feng's mysterious white flame, it still did not have the slightest effect. After all, the fire heart was fused with an external force. It was not born on its own, so there's still some flaws. Otherwise, the time might be doubled, the demonic I said faintly. Just what kind of flame is this flame of yours? Qiu Yin walked over and asked with a curious expression. Since we both got what we wanted, let's leave. If you have other plans, do as you please. Qin Feng did not say anything more about the ancient, desolate spirit flame. He smiled and walked out of the hall without looking back. Qiu Yin was not annoyed by his attitude. After all, no one wanted to expose their trump card. With this mysterious flame that can restrain me, if you want to leave, I might not be able to stop you, Qiu Yun said as she walked side by side with Qin Feng. Qin Feng looked at her and smiled, but did not answer. Since she thought that he relied on the ancient, desolate spirit flame to have his confidence, then let her be. He did not want to explain more. You're so lucky to get this flame. I'm afraid that your mysterious white flame has already given birth to the fire heart. No wonder my flame has no effect in front of you, Qiu Yun whispered. Qin Feng stopped and looked at Qiu Yun in surprise. He did not expect that Qiu Yun, who was usually cold and did not speak much, would be so talkative now. Qiu Yun also realized that she had lost her composure. She quickly adjusted her emotions and returned to her usual cold and indifferent self. She glanced at Qin Feng with some dissatisfaction, then turned and walked away, leaving Qin Feng with a beautiful and cold back view. Qin Feng stared blankly at the woman, who changed her expression faster than flipping a book. He could not help but rub his nose with a bitter smile. This woman has a problem with her brain. The two of them walked out of the hall together. However, before they could leave, the entire hall shook violently, as if it was about to collapse. What's going on? The two of them changed their expressions at the same time. Rumble. A rumbling sound that was like muffled thunder suddenly resounded. Subsequently, Qin Feng and Qiu Yun's expressions instantly became unsightly. At the entrance of the cave, not far from them, an incomparably huge black boulder suddenly fell from above and sealed the entrance. With their eyesight, they could see that this black boulder was not ordinary. They could not break it at all. Moreover, the person who set up this trap wanted to trap others. With their strength, it was obviously difficult to break this black boulder. Be careful. The two of them gradually became dignified. The spiritual power in their bodies flowed quickly in their meridians, ready to face any unexpected situation. Dong! Suddenly, a soft sound was heard. It was particularly prominent in this quiet hall. Qin Feng and Qiu Yun's faces revealed a touch of shock. The two of them looked at each other and saw the unnaturalness in each other's eyes. Chapter 593. Evil Spirit Body. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps came from behind the bronze door. It was especially ear-piercing in this dark and silent hall. There's someone here? Qiu Yun made an unnatural sound. She subconsciously took a step back. Be careful. Qin Feng took a deep breath. Compared to Qiu Yun, he was much calmer. In his qi seed, the Tao seed slowly rotated. Zhou Tianxing's death scripture slowly circulated. The great desolate war body could be activated at any time. The immortal Tensei, I was also in preparation. Dong dong. As the two held their breaths, the sound came again. This time, it was clearer and closer to their previous guess. Dong dong dong. The sound kept coming. It was old-fashioned and stiff, but they were sure that it was the sound of footsteps. Dong dong dong. Under their gazes, the sound of footsteps behind the bronze door was getting closer and closer. Creak! A dull and unpleasant sound slowly came out. The bronze door slowly moved, and a white bone arm slowly stretched out. A moment later, a white skeleton without any flesh appeared in front of the two. Qin Feng's pupils shrank as he stared at the white skeleton. The skeleton was snow white, and there was a faint black chi flowing around the ribs where the heart was. And in those deep eye sockets, there was a crimson black flowing about. They were like two eyeballs, emitting an indescribable coldness, treacherousness, and demonic evilness, causing Qin Feng's heart to tremble and tighten. This is a true evil spirit body. Be careful. This is a person who was once corroded by an evil spirit. Now that he has become an evil spirit body, his strength shouldn't be weak. It's not comparable to the ones that the girl met before. The demonic eye's voice sounded in Qin Feng's mind with a hint of heaviness. Qin Feng stared at the white skeleton. After a while, he asked, what was his strength when he was alive? It's not weak. In fact, it's pretty good. I don't know why it's able to deceive the heavens and avoid being killed by the world. However, because too much time has passed, most of its power has been eroded by time. However, I estimate that the strength of this skeleton is at least at the level of the third heaven realm. It might even be stronger. It's very difficult to speculate if it involves an evil spirit, said the demon eye. Moreover, the power of evil spirits cannot be judged by common sense. When fighting with them, you must be careful of being corroded by them. You should understand your own situation. In this world, you're the easiest to be corroded by evil spirits. Hearing this, Qin Feng's expression suddenly changed, becoming slightly unsightly. Three heavens realm and an evil spirit body. Such an expert was still too strong for him. If he was still stronger than this, then he would not have any power to contend with him. Even with Qiu Yun, it would be very difficult. However, you have an advantage that others do not have, and that is the spiritual fire. The spiritual fire is the nemesis of evil spirits. In battle, use the ancient desolate spirit flame to protect your heart and veins. You must also isolate the evil spirit seed in your body from the outside world to prevent the two from resonating and summoning each other. Qin Feng nodded slightly. The ancient desolate spirit flame seeped out of his pores and enveloped his entire body. It's this kind of thing again. Qiu Yun's expression was extremely solemn. She stared at the white skeleton and said in a low voice, but why do I feel that this guy is even more terrifying than the ones we met outside? No matter how powerful it is, we still have to find a way to defeat it. If you want to wear the crown, you have to bear its weight. We took the things here. Clearly, the previous owner of this place did not want others to take it for free. Qin Feng said in a deep voice. He could only say so and not tell the truth. Qiu Yun nodded and quickly calmed down. Purple spiritual fire burst out and coiled around her body, releasing a terrifying temperature. Let's go. Qin Feng took the lead and rushed out. He directly activated his strongest state. A layer of chaotic light condensed on the surface of the white skeleton. The ancient desolate spirit flame pulsated with ancient desolate spirit flame and turned into a huge fist, greeting the white skeleton. However, Qin Feng's attack was enough to make a two-heaven realm expert, not to underestimate it. Under the white skeleton's bony palm, it was as fragile as paper. The white skeleton waved its palm and scattered the spiritual fire fist. However, it was extremely fast and instantly closed in on Qin Feng. Spiritual fire palm. A shout suddenly rang out. A huge purple palm suddenly slapped horizontally and sent the white skeleton flying. The white skeleton rolled on the ground twice and stood up. The black aura on its ribs became a little darker. It abandoned Qin Feng and directly shot towards Qiu Yun. Obviously, it instinctively sensed that the one who could bring danger to it was this woman. Qiu Yun's expression was cold. The purple spiritual energy around her burned like flames. The moist air in the palace emitted bursts of sizzling sounds. She waved her hand, and the spiritual energy burst out, enveloping the white skeleton. However, she still underestimated the white skeleton's strength. Every time the white skeleton waved, it would disperse a large amount of purple spiritual energy. Moreover, the burning from the flames did not affect the white skeleton at all. Bang! When the last piece of spiritual energy was dispersed, the white skeleton quickly moved and appeared in front of Qiu Yun. Then it slapped its bony palm again. It heavily hit the purple shield that the latter had condensed with all her strength. Crack! Almost in an instant, cracks appeared on the purple shield, and then it shattered with a loud bang. When Xiaoyun saw this, thick disbelief surged within her eyes. The strength of this white skeleton had far exceeded her imagination. However, she did not have the time to care so much at this moment. She quickly withdrew and retreated. However, even though her speed was very fast, she was still swept by the palm wind that overflowed, and she staggered backwards. The white skeleton quickly followed. Boom! 3 elements mutual generation hand. The tricolored hand quickly attacked and slammed into the white skeleton, causing the latter's body to move slightly. The terrifying palm also deviated from its original trajectory and slapped past Xiaoyun's shoulder. A fiery pain was transmitted from her shoulder, causing Xiaoyun to rapidly retreat. Her expression was ugly as she stared at the white skeleton. The latter's strength was too terrifying. With her current strength, if she used her full strength, she would not end up in such a miserable state, even if she faced an ordinary 4 Heaven stage expert. According to her estimation, the white skeleton's strength was probably comparable to the late stage of the 4 Heavens realm, or even stronger. "Old man, what should we do?" Qin Feng anxiously called out to the demon eye. The white skeleton's strength was far beyond his expectations. His full strength attack could not cause any hindrance to it. The difference between the two was too great. Even if Xiaoyun joined forces, it was simply not enough. Try to get close to it. As long as the distance is close enough, I can absorb the black qi in its heart. Without this thing to activate the demonic energy, it will not be a threat, the demon eye said in a deep voice. Chapter 594. Against the enemy bang. Bang, bang. In a huge palace, muffled sounds of collisions could be heard from time to time. Ferocious spiritual energy waves, along with blazing heat, shot out in all directions. Amidst the wanton spiritual energy waves, a beautiful figure was constantly retreating. Bang! Another sound rang out. Xiaoyun's body was sent flying. The purple spiritual energy around her body was dispersed by the shockwave. Her face was also a little pale. Clearly, this kind of battle had consumed a lot of her energy. Qi, 2 spiritual energy, 1 white and 1 black, shot out and wrapped around the white skeleton like pythons. The white spiritual energy burned with a scorching heat that caused the void to distort, while the black spiritual energy flashed with a cold aura that seemed to freeze the air. Under the effects of the extreme cold and heat, the white skeleton started to emit a sizzling sound. Whoosh! Qin Feng quickly approached the white skeleton. Just as he was about to use his right hand to touch the white skeleton, his face suddenly changed and he retreated. Boom! The moment he retreated, the white skeleton's body shook violently. The black and white spiritual energy that wrapped around it were instantly dispersed. The skeleton swung its arm and swept past Qin Feng's face. The sharp wind caused a stinging pain in his face. The white skeleton's speed was too fast. Even if Qin Feng's reaction was fast enough, he still almost fell. The skeleton swung its arm, and the white skeleton suddenly moved. In an instant, it appeared in front of Qin Feng. The skeleton's palm was aimed at the latter's chest and fiercely slapped it. The air in front of the skeleton's palm was constantly crushed. The void was distorted. Feeling the terrifying power contained in the skeleton's palm, Qin Feng's scalp went numb. He crazily activated the spiritual energy in his body. The black and white spiritual energy and physical strength burst out at the same time and blocked in front of his chest. He then retreated once again. Bang! However, the power that was enough to block the attack of a 2 Heaven stage expert cracked inch by inch under the skeleton's palm. It was simply unable to block it. Boom! The bone palm penetrated through all the obstructions and smashed onto Qin Feng's chest. However, because the obstruction had exhausted a portion of the bone palm's strength, in addition to the fact that Qin Feng was in a retreating state, the bone palm's strength that poured onto his body was only 20 to 30%. However, just this little bit of strength was enough to cause Qin Feng's body to be sent flying and his blood and qi to churn. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, the gap between him and the white skeleton. Even Xiao Yun, who was a 3-heaven stage expert, was defeated in front of the skeletons to time. 2. Furthermore, the burning of the ancient desolate spiritual flame and the erosion of the underworld pill's cold Yin energy had no effect on the white skeleton. After knocking back Qin Feng with one blow, the white skeleton did not chase after him. Instead, it continued to attack Xiao Yun. Obviously, it did not put Qin Feng in its eyes. Its target was Xiao Yun. Seeing the white skeleton attack again, Xiao Yun felt bitter in her heart. This fellow's strength was too terrifying. Even if she gave it her all, she could only prevent herself from being seriously injured for a limited period of time. She simply did not have the power to resist. According to her estimation, the strength of the white skeleton was probably about to exceed the limit of a 4-heaven stage expert. Of course, it was only in terms of strength and did not have any spiritual energy fluctuations. Otherwise, they would have been seriously injured without any room to fight back. This fellow is too abnormal. What should we do? Qin Feng took a deep breath. The terror of the white skeleton was far beyond his imagination. Not to mention getting close, even blocking 1 or 2 attacks will be difficult. No matter how powerful it is, it's just a battle puppet without consciousness. You don't need to get close for a long time. You can get close in an instant or control me to come into contact with it for a short time. As long as you're at a certain distance, I can absorb the black gas on the skeleton. If 1 time doesn't work, try twice. If 2 times don't work, try thrice. I'll slowly absorb it, the demon, I said in a deep voice. I didn't even get close just now, but I was almost seriously injured. This fellow's speed is faster than mine. How can I get close? Qin Feng said helplessly. That's your problem. I've told you the method. What you do is up to you. However, I have to remind you that it's not good for you to drag this out. This fellow doesn't feel any fatigue or pain. The corner of Qin Feng's mouth twitched. How are they going to fight? However, he also knew that he could not afford to delay any longer. He was too lazy to ask the demon eye, because Xiao Yun was already retreating. She would probably be injured in another 2 or 3 breaths. Just as he was about to rush forward, the demon eye said angrily, "What an idiot. This evil spirit has no consciousness. Naturally, it can't sense mental strength. You can hide me and get close to it." Hearing this, Qin Feng was stunned. He immediately slapped his forehead. How could he have neglected mental strength? Although his mental power was weak, it was fatal to an opponent who could not sense his existence. After resolving Xiao Yun's crisis with 2 heavy punches, Qin Feng shouted at her, "Xiao Yun, I have a way to deal with it. However, I need to get close to it. Block it for me. Don't let it hit me." "You have a way?" Xiao Yun was panting. She was puzzled. "It doesn't matter if I have a way or not. I can only try." Qin Feng shouted and rushed toward the white skeleton. Although the white skeleton did not have any spiritual power or demonic power, every time it attacked, it could cause the air to explode and the void to ripple. His mental strength could not withstand it all. He could only wrap the demon eye in his mental strength within a certain range and get close to it instantly. "Cooperate with me." Body-changing steps. With a shout, Qin Feng suddenly disappeared and reappeared less than 3 meters to the left of the white skeleton. He stretched out his right hand, and his spiritual power broke through the turbulent void. His mental strength wrapped around the demon eye, and he quickly approached the white skeleton's heart. Whoosh! As the demon eye approached, a dark air that was invisible to the naked eye was sucked into the demon eye from the white skeleton. However, as soon as it sucked in a wisp, a terrifying wind rushed toward it. A bone palm grew bigger and bigger in Qin Feng's eyes. Whoosh! Purple flames swept over and blocked in front of Qin Feng. Bang! The bone palm passed through and slapped toward Qin Feng. Buzz! Black and white spiritual power intertwined and blocked in front of his chest. Bang! The bone palm swept past and the spiritual power dissipated. Buzz! The chaotic light condensed into a shield and placed horizontally in front of his chest. Dong! The primal chaos shield was in a deadlock for a moment under the bone palm before it was shattered. After 3 waves of attacks, the bone palm finally smashed toward Qin Feng's chest without any obstruction. At this moment, Qin Feng had successfully absorbed the second wisp of black air. He clenched his fist and met the bone palm head-on. Clang! A crisp sound was heard. The white skeleton did not move at all, and Qin Feng was directly thrown back. His fist was red, and his entire arm was numb. Qin Feng's heart couldn't help but tremble. This was still the bone palm after breaking through 3 layers of defense. It had almost crippled his arm. If any of the layers were missing, his arm would probably be crippled today. Chapter 595. Darkness blocks the path. Just as Qin Feng was thinking, a terrifying gust of wind suddenly assaulted him. The white skeleton actually gave up on attacking Xiao Yun, who was stronger, and turned to attack Qin Feng. Be careful. This fellow instinctively feels that you can weaken its strength. Its current target is you. The demonic eye's voice suddenly rang out, causing Qin Feng's skin to turn cold. Body-changing steps. In an instant, Qin Feng used the body-changing steps and teleported a few meters away, avoiding the white skeleton's fatal attack. As he retreated, Qin Feng shouted at Xiao Yun, tied down. My method is feasible. At this moment, there was no need for his reminder. Xiao Yun's attack had already arrived. Purple flames wrapped around the white skeleton, buying time for Qin Feng to recover. When the white skeleton broke free from the purple flames, Qin Feng had already escaped to a place far away. If we continue to cooperate like this fellow's strength will be weakened. Qin Feng said to Xiao Yun. After a short period of recovery, he once again shot towards the white skeleton. Spiritual light flashed in his palm as his mental energy wrapped around the demonic eye once again and shot out. However, in this short period of time, Qin Feng absorbed 2 strands of black air from the skeleton's body and successfully retreated with the help of 3 layers of defense. The two's cooperation became more and more tacit as they practiced. In the end, Qin Feng didn't even need to fight against the white skeleton and was able to withdraw. In the hall, the white skeleton's attacks seemed fierce. Qin Feng and Xiao Yun were also in an abnormally difficult situation. However, the two of them didn't suffer any heavy injuries from beginning to end. Moreover, as the two of them successfully cooperated again and again, the strength of the white skeleton's attacks also decreased. Sometimes, after Qin Feng absorbed 2 strands of black air, with Xiao Yun's help, he was able to directly resist the white skeleton's attacks. Bang! Once again, Qin Feng's fist heavily collided with the bone palm. However, this time, Qin Feng's body merely trembled before stabilizing. You can't do it now. Qin Feng sneered. Instead of retreating, he moved forward. His right hand directly slapped the white skeleton's heart. The demonic eye squirmed slightly, and the suction force suddenly increased. Streams of black air were sucked into the demonic eye. Instinctively sensing the rapid loss of its strength, the white skeleton fiercely resisted. However, when the purple flames swept over, its resistance was blocked. Moreover, as time passed, the resistance was rapidly weakening. When the last wisp of black air was sucked away, the spirit force in Qin Feng's palm suddenly erupted. The ferocious shockwave directly blasted the white skeleton away. The bones were shattered and scattered everywhere. Under the joint efforts of Qin Feng and Xiao Yun, the white skeleton was defeated. In his palm, the spiritual energy slowly dissipated and the demonic eye flickered for a moment before disappearing. Qin Feng gently exhaled and his tensed body instantly relaxed. Their battle didn't seem to be intense, but the consumption of physical strength and mental energy was more terrifying than an ordinary battle. Especially in the early stages of cooperation, if there was a slight carelessness, Qin Feng would have been seriously injured or even killed. Being in such a state of high tension consumed too much of his energy. Therefore, when it was over, Qin Feng's entire body and mind were filled with weakness. Fortunately, the main attacker was Qiu Yun. He didn't open the second gate. Therefore, his body, which could completely withstand the backlash of the Gate of Life, didn't suffer much damage. It was just excessive exhaustion. Qiu Yun walked over and looked at the scattered skeletons with lingering fear. Then, she looked at Qin Feng, and the complexity in her eyes became more intense. At this point, how could she not guess that the continuous weakening of the white skeleton was due to Qin Feng's means? However, she didn't ask. She just looked at Qin Feng deeply and sat down cross-legged to recover her exhausted strength. After a long while, she recovered first and looked at the bronze stone door. After a while, Qin Feng also recovered. He looked at Qiu Yun and asked with a smile, "Do you want to see what's behind the stone door?" Qiu Yun raised her eyebrows. After thinking for a while, she nodded. Now that the retreat was sealed, it seemed that this was the only way to go. The two looked at each other. After adjusting their condition to the peak, they didn't hesitate and walked through the bronze stone door. The bronze stone door was extremely ancient. They didn't know which era it belonged to. There were many extremely complicated patterns and totems carved on it. There were also many beast shapes, but the two couldn't understand what kind of spirit beast they were. The two looked at each other and then went through the gap of the door. Behind the bronze door was a vast and boundless world. The two stared at it with wide eyes. If they didn't experience it for themselves, it was really hard to imagine that such a vast and boundless place would appear in this underground dead end. This place didn't look any different from the outside world. The earth, mountains, rivers, tall trees, short grass, everything that could be seen in the outside world was here. However, this place was slightly darker than the normal world. It was like the sunset, emitting an inexplicable feeling of vicissitudes. "We should have returned to the surface," Qin Feng said. The two walked in this world, and their faces were quite solemn. The white skeleton entered the palace from here. It was difficult to guarantee that there weren't other white skeletons of the same strength. However, their worries were superfluous. It was quiet here. Other than the slight sound of the two walking, there was no other unusual movement. "This place seems a little abnormal," Qiu Yun said softly, and her face became more and more solemn. Qin Feng nodded. He naturally also noticed that this place was too strange. It was obviously exactly the same as the normal world, but there was always a sense of strangeness. It was as if such a place didn't conform to the natural ecology and shouldn't exist. The two quickly went away on their respective heaven tools. After passing through many mountains, a huge natural moat blocked their way. It was like a huge black screen. The top was connected to the sky, and the bottom was rooted in the ground. The sound of flowing water could be heard. The black screen was connected to the sky and the earth, and it was extremely spectacular and magnificent. However, at the same time, there was also an extremely frightening chill that spread out. Even from far away, one could feel the chill on their skin, and they needed to use their spiritual energy to resist it before they could get close. Qin Feng's face was quite strange at this time because he sensed that the cold air here was quite similar to the underworld elixir in his body. "What is this?" After getting closer, the feeling became stronger. Qin Feng couldn't help but ask the demonic eye in his heart. "I'm not sure, but it's somewhat similar to the underworld elixir in your body." The demonic eye sensed for a moment and said in a deep voice, "You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.